Get out. Your old lady smell is ruining my new house, Michaela shouted as she threw disinfectant on me during her housewarming party. Drenched and overwhelmed by the pungent smell, I felt something snap inside me. Standing up silently, I flashed a terrifying smile at Michaela and said, "Then I'll clean this up for you. After all, I built it." I went upstairs to Michaela's room to retrieve something. My name is Harmony, a 72-year-old retired confectioner. More precisely, I was a patissier who ran a cake shop until a leg injury forced me into retirement. Now, I help my son and his wife who have taken over the business and live a modest life. Harmony, you must be happy your son took over, people would say at the tea parties I occasionally attended. I brought cakes made by my son and his wife, earning praise from neighbors. Today, at the tea party, I was engrossed in conversations when a neighbor mentioned my son. I stared at my tea, lost in thought. "A shop with many memories, isn't it?" someone remarked, prompting me to reminisce. Indeed, my life had been full of ups and downs. I opened my patisserie at 35 after a decade of training in France. Upon returning, my parents opposed the idea, saying a cake shop in the countryside wouldn't work. I defied them, saying, "I'll do it my way," and opened my shop. It became popular in 6 months, becoming the talk of the town. My French-trained skills were praised, attracting customers quickly. My once opposed parents came to respect and fully support me. "Time to think of the next new creation," my husband Daniel said, supporting our cake shop while preparing for the next day. "Summer is tough for sales. Maybe a cold dessert would be a hit." That's what we were discussing when we heard the bell at the shop door. I hurried to the counter. "Welcome," I called out, only to see Michaela, my sister-in-law, who appeared 2 years older than me. She was always flamboyant, having moved from the city. She dressed to stand out, enjoying the attention. Today she wore an actress hat and sunglasses, not fitting for the countryside. Honestly, I disliked her. Her hurtful remarks and belittling of our cake shop were intolerable. Being a doctor at a university hospital, she flaunted her income and education, but only when my brother Kendrick wasn't around. I was deeply annoyed by her cowardice. Boring as ever. "The decor's outdated and it's dusty. Do you even clean?" Michaela said, worried her fancy clothes would get dirty. I couldn't hide my annoyance and responded curtly, "Did you come just to say that?" "I just stopped by on my way to my new house. Why else would I visit such a place?" she replied, looking around carelessly and picking up a cookie, placing it roughly at the register. "I can't see the shop lasting, but I'll contribute to the sale since you're Kendrick's sister." She bought a mere $7 cookie with that attitude. Who could warmly welcome such a sister-in-law? If she were Kendrick's wife, I'd have her out of here immediately. As I wrapped the product, grappling with these complaints in my heart, Michaela continued her tirade. "Poor Kendrick, having such a failure for a sister. He said he gave up on his own shop because of you." Her words struck my heart painfully. Kendrick had generously helped finance my shop's construction when I returned and found no support. Only Kendrick stood by me. Later, I discovered the money he used was his own saved-up capital for starting a business. If you hadn't interfered, Kendrick might have had his own shop by now. Really pishable. "Then why don't you help him financially?" Daniel appeared behind me and retorted sharply at Michaela, glaring at her. "It's between Harmony and Kendrick, not for outsiders like us. Only Kendrick has the right to complain about Harmony. Do you even have the right to blame her?" Daniel, undaunted by Michaela, confronted her. Michaela, seemingly annoyed by Daniel's audacity, furrowed her brows and removed her sunglasses with a puzzled look. "Of course I have the right. That money was mine. You have no business interfering in this. The funds for Harmony's shop were from before Kendrick married you, right? If Kendrick has no complaints, why should you persistently blame Harmony? Harmony is my wife." Which husband would remain silent while his wife is being maligned? Daniel shielded me from showing my tears to Michaela. I felt reassured by his presence and grateful to be his wife. Michaela, not amused by Daniel's words, roughly grabbed the wrapped cookies from the counter and left without another word. After she left, we put up the closed sign, and Daniel embraced me. "You endured well, Harmony," he said softly. "I can't do this anymore. I don't have the confidence to get along with someone like her. Even if she's Kendrick's wife, I can't bear being treated this way." "Are you not going to tell Kendrick?" Daniel asked gently. "I can't. He's already looking after Mom and Dad. I can't trouble him just because I can't get along with her." Kendrick, working as a chef in a hotel, was also taking care of our parents. Despite the long commute he managed, he had saved to open his own shop and be closer to our parents. It was with this in mind that he was saving money. Money can be earned again. I want to see you succeed as a top patissier. This money is an investment in your future. You'll definitely become famous, Kendrick assured me, investing $2 million in my startup. I was deeply grateful to Kendrick, and when he married Michaela, I was overjoyed. But I never expected her to be like this. I was tormented daily about what to do. Tomorrow we're going to Kendrick's housewarming, right? Maybe you could mention it to him. If Kendrick talks to Michaela, maybe she'll stop, Daniel suggested. Reluctantly agreeing, I focused on closing up the shop. Lately, I couldn't bring myself to tell Kendrick about Michaela. Kendrick's happiness while he supported mom and dad was precious. Despite sacrificing his own dream of opening a shop, I couldn't burden him further with Michaela's issue. I simply couldn't. The next day, Daniel and I, with a shortcake in hand, visited Kendrick's new home. Harmony and Daniel, long time no see. Glad you could make it, Kendrick welcomed us warmly at the doorstep. Michaela was out shopping and wasn't there. I felt relieved not seeing her. Noticing this, Kendrick looked at me worriedly. What's wrong? You look pale. Is it the new house smell? No way, just had a bit too much to drink with Danny last night. I forced a smile to reassure Kendrick and avoid any awkward conversation. I asked to see around the new house. Kendrick shared that apart from the tidy living room, their personal items were still in boxes. We agreed not to go upstairs as per his request. Soon, our parents arrived, and we enjoyed a rare family gathering. Then Daniel seized the opportunity to bring up yesterday's topic. Sorry to bring this up at a housewarming, but there's something about Michaela we need to discuss. Wait, Danny. I wasn't ready, I panicked, but Daniel looked at me earnestly, holding my hand. Harmony, I've seen how hard you've worked, thinking about the family, keeping your struggles to yourself. It seems unfair to Kendrick and the others. Struggles? Harmony, have you been having a hard time? Kendrick asked, his expression full of concern. Realizing I was hiding something, everyone looked worried. I regretted my foolish thought of just enduring it all. Actually, I've been harassed by Michaela for a long time, I confessed. Everyone was shocked, especially Kendrick. Knowing his wife was bullying his sister-in-law was understandably distressing. Unable to continue, Daniel explained the situation for me. A heavy silence followed, and I wondered if I should have kept quiet. That's when Kendrick, as if having made a decision, spoke to Mom. Mom, I've made up my mind. That's right, no need to hold back anymore. Daniel and I exchanged confused looks at the unexpected response. Just as we were about to ask more, we heard the front door open. I'm back. It's so hot outside. Is Kendrick not here? Michaela returned home at the worst possible time. The family's spirits dampened as if sensing the charged air of her untimely arrival. Kendrick excused himself and headed towards the entrance. Let's store the cake in the fridge for now, Daniel suggested. As Mom and I moved to do so, reaching for the fridge door, Michaela stormed into the living room. Hey, don't you touch our stuff, she shouted, startling Mom and me. I'll take care of the house. Just stay put. Fading a creepy pleasant smile, she snatched the cake from me. Her words seemed softened, but there was an underlying sharpness, especially as she roughly took the cake. Mom, witnessing this, was speechless and unable to react, shocked by such treatment in front of her. Feeling hurt, I urged Mom to join me on the living room sofa. Sitting next to Daniel, I tried to hold back my tears. Thank you all for coming to our housewarming today, Michaela said, her tone falsely sweet. If you have gifts, you can leave them here. I'll gladly accept them, Michaela said, taking over as if she were the host. Her greedy words irritated both Daniel and me. Our parents, watching her closely, reluctantly presented their gift to Michaela. Following suit, though not keen, I handed over my gift, which Michaela snatched. What a boring gift. Typical, Michaela muttered, just loud enough for me to hear. Shocked by her audacity to complain despite receiving a gift, I felt my patience turning into anger. Then Michaela took out a bottle of disinfectant from a supermarket bag. Well then, let's wrap this up, she said, splashing the disinfectant on me. Drenched and stunned, I was speechless as my family cried out in alarm. So, I guess it's the height of the party, Michaela said, turning toward me and splashing the disinfectant again. Completely soaked, I couldn't believe the sudden turn of events. My family gasped. Hey, Michaela, what are you doing? Mom shouted, raising her voice and standing in front of me to protect me. Everyone glared at Michaela. Michaela sneered and threw her final words at me. The smell of an old lady will dirty my new house. Get out. At that moment, something inside me snapped. Silently, I stood up with a frighteningly pleasant smile and said, "So you hate filth that much? Well, let me clean it up for you. After all, I built this place." Seeing me smile, Michaela seemed terrified and stepped back. I snatched all the presents from her, ignoring her complaints, and headed to the second floor. Conveniently, there was a nameplate with Michaela's name on it in front of the door, and I boldly walked inside. I picked up a cardboard box still packed and dropped it from the second floor to the first with a bang. "Hey, what are you doing?" Michaela tried to stop me as the boxes tumbled down one after another. With so many boxes rolling down, she couldn't come up and could only desperately scream in vain. As I dropped the last box, she yelled, "Do you realize what you're doing?" Michaela, showing her true colors in front of Kendrick, glared at me with a devilish face. Unconcerned, I went downstairs and asked Daniel with a smile, "Can you hold back that noisy trash for me? We can't let the dirty germs out. The new house will get dirty with the smell of mold, right?" Daniel must have been scared too. The words from my ever-smiling face were no longer treating Michaela as a human. I threw all her belongings outside with apparent delight. People might think I've lost my mind, and it can't be helped that they think so. "Stop it, Kendrick. What are you just staring at? Stop her. Isn't your sister out of her mind?" Michaela screamed desperately. However, Kendrick did not respond. Instead, he silently watched my next move. The entrance was overflowing with Michaela's cardboard boxes, a mess, but it couldn't be helped after throwing everything outside. I clapped my hands and walked towards Michaela for the final touch. "Well, now it's just Michaela left." "What do you mean? You think you can get away with this?" She spat, her voice laced with venom. "Who knows? I can't hear the threats of trash," I replied, my smile mechanical and eerie. Michaela gasped, looking at me fearfully. Without paying her any more attention, I instructed Daniel to kick her out along with her slippers. "Hey, stop. No, Kendrick, help me." Michaela begged Kendrick for help, but he had no intention of listening to her. At this point, I understood what Kendrick and the others meant. There wasn't a single person on her side here. "Get out if you understand. This is my house after all." "What? What are you talking about?" Before Michaela could finish, Daniel dragged her out, pushing her outside the entrance. He immediately closed the door, double-locked it, and even chained it. Michaela, now completely unable to enter, was left outside in the summer heat. She banged on the door and screamed for about 10 minutes, but her strength gradually waned. To make matters worse, neighbors came by and started whispering about her shabby appearance. "Mommy, look, that lady is outside in her slippers," a child said, pointing. "Hey, don't do that. Don't point," a parent chided, though even passing children mocked Michaela. For someone so full of pride, this public humiliation was hell. She crammed all her belongings into her car and fled the scene that day. Seeing this, I regained my composure and hastily turned to Kendrick. "What should we do, Kendrick?" "I'm sorry, that was?" "It's okay, I know the situation. Besides, we should be the ones apologizing," Kendrick said gently. He suggested we go back to the living room where Mom had prepared tea and cake. I borrowed clothes from Kendrick and quickly changed to avoid catching a cold. After changing, we all sat down, trying to find some semblance of normalcy amidst the chaos. I sat on the living room sofa as Kendrick began explaining why he had been silent all this time. "That woman was actually harassing Mom in the same way," he said. "What?" I was shocked by this sudden revelation. Daniel and I looked at Mom in surprise. "It all happened when I wasn't around," Mom continued. "She constantly harassed and mocked me, even made fun of you. It was really terrible. Michaela had been bad-mouthing you every time we met, suggesting that your poor upbringing was due to my bad parenting. She claimed that if we had more money, Kendrick wouldn't have had to struggle. That's what I confessed to Kendrick yesterday." Kendrick nodded. "Mom told me everything, and I decided that since you built the house, we should explain the situation to you and your family before deciding what to do next. That's what led to today." Michaela, who even tormented Mom, could never be forgiven. Trembling with anger, I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. Seeing this, Daniel gently placed his hand over mine. "Harmony, I know how much you care about family. Maybe you don't have to endure this anymore," Daniel said softly. "After hearing all this, I definitely can't go on with her either," I said, my resolve solidifying. Inspired by Kendrick's determination, I steeled myself to teach Michaela a lesson. We pledged to act, and the next day, my phone was flooded with a storm of calls from Michaela, Kendrick, Daniel, and I decided to meet her alone. "What do you mean by kicking me out of the house? You won't get away with what you did." Michaela's shrill voice echoed as she entered my office. Wearing the same clothes as yesterday, with dark circles under her eyes from lack of sleep, she looked miserable. Her loud voice was irritating, but I didn't let it show. Instead, I smiled sweetly, further infuriating her with my words. "I cleaned up because you said the new house gets dirty, right?" "What?" "I don't want someone as ugly as you in the house. The new house will get dirty with germs, right?" I said, putting my index finger to my lips, feigning cuteness. As unsuitable as it felt for me, it seemed to affect Michaela. Her face turned red as a boiled lobster, showing her anger. "Who's ugly? I'm far more beautiful than a third-rate woman like you," she spat. "To say that with the same clothes as yesterday and such a dirty face. Impressive," I replied, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Whose fault do you think it is that I ended up like this?" Michaela retorted, doubling down on her previous provocations. "A woman like you, acting all high and mighty," I said, meeting her gaze steadily. The tension in the room was palpable, and I knew there was no turning back now. I taunted Michaela, which angered her enough to lunge at me. Daniel quickly stood protectively in front of me, and Kendrick, usually mild-mannered, showed his anger for the first time. "Enough. You're in no position to talk down to Harmony and her family," he said firmly. "Why should I be the one getting scolded? The bad one is clearly that woman." Michaela remained defiant, even against Kendrick's words. She must have looked down on Kendrick as well. Deep down, she was after money, blaming me for losing it and despising me despite having her own earnings. Her greed was despicable. As I glared at her with utter contempt, Kendrick slammed a piece of paper in front of her. "I have no intention of going on with someone who can't even value my family. We're getting a divorce." The paper Kendrick presented was a divorce petition already signed by him and our father as a guarantor. Seeing this, Michaela suddenly regained her composure and clung to Kendrick in a panic. "Wait, a divorce? Just wait. I don't want to hear what you have to say. My mind is made up, and if you refuse the divorce, I'll go to court if I have to. Where do you think the money for that will come from? You don't have the financial power, so don't talk big. I'll support you financially, so don't worry." Michaela tried to act humble, but Kendrick's words revealed her true nature again. Now that we had proof of her looking down on Kendrick financially, we could crush her without remorse. Smiling, I intervened between them. "Didn't you know? Besides this store, I have several others." Michaela looked at me, confusion and desperation in her eyes. She was trying to comprehend what she had just heard, but I didn't give her a chance to respond. "You thought you could manipulate Kendrick for his money? You thought wrong." Her face turned pale as the realization of her situation set in. The tables had turned, and she knew it. Kendrick, Daniel, and I stood united, and there was no way she could worm her way out of this. Kendrick gently but firmly pushed Michaela away from him. "It's over, Michaela. Leave and don't come back." Defeated, Michaela had no choice but to leave. As she walked out, her once arrogant demeanor was replaced with a sense of utter defeat. We watched her go, feeling the sense of relief and closure. Turning back to Kendrick and Daniel, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. "Thank you," I said, my voice filled with gratitude. Kendrick smiled warmly. "We're family. We protect each other." "I have enough financial power to fight you," I said, causing Michaela to gasp in surprise. A TV show had previously featured one of my regular customers praising my shop. The reporter raved about its beauty and deliciousness, leading to its popularity. Requests for more stores came flooding in, and now I have a nationwide chain. Kendrick was the only one who supported the opening of my shop. As a thank you, I gifted him that house. I had also heard about your plans to open a clinic nearby and thought you'd need money. Michaela's face turned pale upon hearing the whole situation. She must have realized she'd picked a fight with the wrong person. She was speechless. "Since I still hold the property rights, I am the owner of that house. I can sue you for trespassing. What will you do? Will you fight?" With a smile, I cornered Michaela, who seemingly gave in and began to profusely apologize. Even though Michaela continued to apologize, our family had no intention of forgiving her, and we kicked her out of the store. Kendrick and Michaela eventually went to court for a divorce. Given everything that had happened, our lawyer assured us that the divorce would be granted. Our family savored this victory. During the time she was kicked out, Michaela's face became well known in the neighborhood, and no one was sympathetic towards her. Her clinic had no patients and closed within 3 months. She shamefully fled the town. Thus, our family found peace. I continued managing my shops, and Kendrick finally opened his own. Kendrick, Dad, and Mom started living in the new house, which we remodeled for accessibility. Harmony, what happened? You suddenly went quiet, a neighbor asked, snapping me back to reality during a tea party. Sorry, it's nothing. I'm just really grateful to those kids, I responded. Thanks to them, I'm now enjoying a peaceful retirement with my husband. As we enjoyed the cake, I reflected on how these nearly 40 years were the stepping stones to my current happiness.
I never believed in fate, not until the day I bumped into Alex at the department store. It was one of those busy sale days, the kind where you find yourself elbow to elbow with strangers, all hunting for a bargain. That's where our story began, amidst the chaos and the discount signs. I'm Sarah, by the way, a librarian with a love for quiet spaces and the rustle of pages. My life was simple, routine, and I liked it that way. Then, Alex stormed in, like a character out of one of those romance novels I secretly enjoyed during my lunch breaks. He was a sales manager, a man who thrived in the hustle and the bustle, a stark contrast to my own world. Hey, watch it! I snapped as someone's hand brushed against mine, reaching for the last lamp on sale. I looked up, ready to unleash my frustration on the intruder, but my words faltered. There he was, Alex, with a grin that could light up the dim aisle we stood in. Sorry about that, he chuckled, his hand still on the lamp I had my eyes on. But I saw it first. I raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. Dream on. I've had my eye on this since I stepped into this aisle. The banter could have ended there, with one of us walking away in defeat. But Alex, with his easy charm, suggested, how about we grab a coffee instead? My treat. You can tell me all about the other bargains you've snatched today. I was taken aback. Men like him didn't usually notice women like me, women who preferred the background, the sidelines. Yet, there was a sincerity in his eyes that caught me off guard. Against my better judgment, I found myself nodding, a small smile creeping up on my face. The coffee shop was crowded, but Alex found us a quiet corner. As we sat, sipping on our drinks, the conversation flowed effortlessly. He talked about his job, how he loved the challenge, the thrill of closing a deal. I shared my passion for books, how each page whisked me away to a different world. You're interesting, Sarah, he said, his gaze intense. Most people I meet are all about the surface stuff. But you've got depth. I could feel my cheeks heating up at his words. No one had ever described me like that before. And you're not what I expected, I admitted. I thought sales managers were all about the hard sell, the smooth talk. Alex laughed, a deep, rich sound that filled the space between us. Guilty as charged. But there's more to me than just the job, you know. We talked until the coffee shop began to close, neither of us wanting the night to end. It was then that Alex asked for my number, his phone already in hand. I'd like to do this again, Sarah. Without the argument over a lamp. I hesitated, a part of me wary of stepping into unknown territory. Yet, as I looked into his eyes, I saw a glimpse of something more, a connection I couldn't quite explain. So, I gave him my number, setting the stage for what would become the most tumultuous chapter of my life. Our chats turned into dates into a relationship, and before I knew it, Alex and I were standing at the altar, promising each other forever. We moved into his house, a cozy little place that soon felt like home. Our dreams of starting a family, however, proved to be a challenge, testing our bond in ways I never imagined. Life has a way of flipping the script on you, doesn't it? For years, Alex and I chased the dream of having a kid, running the gamut of tests only to be told by doctors to keep the faith. We did, until we didn't. Somewhere down the line, hope turned into acceptance that it would just be the two of us. Only, that acceptance brewed a distance between Alex and me, a gap that widened with every late night he spent at work or with his buddies while I was left to stare at the empty rooms of our home. I really tried to bridge that gap. "Alex, maybe we should see someone, a professional to talk about this," I suggested one evening, mustering all the courage I had. He looked at me like I'd suggested selling the house to join the circus. "A shrink? For what? So they can tell us how to talk to each other? No way, Sarah." And just like that, the conversation was over before it even began. But life, unpredictable as ever, had another curveball in store. Feeling off one day led me to the hospital, tests, and then the shocker of a lifetime: I was pregnant. The joy of it overwhelmed me, a joy I couldn't wait to share with Alex. His reaction, though, was as cold as ice. "Pregnant? Sarah, you know how old you are, right? You're an old 39-year-old woman with your sores and problems. This is risky, dangerous even. Maybe we should think about not going through with it." His words hit me like a slap. Not go through with it? "Alex, this is our baby, our miracle." But the Alex standing in front of me wasn't the man I married. This version was distant, cold, and calculated. A miracle? Or a mistake? Think about it, Sarah. Pregnancy was anything but easy. My body felt like it was on a roller coaster, and my heart? Well, it was breaking. Alex's visits were few and far between, each one more awkward and strained than the last. Coming home from the hospital only meant returning to a house that felt less and less like a home. "You're not even working, Sarah. I'm out here, busting my ass, and for what? So you can play house?" Alex threw those words at me one night, his frustration boiling over. I bit back the hurt, the anger. "Playing house? Is that what you think I'm doing?" "I'm carrying our child, Alex. Our child." But it was like talking to a wall. A wall that was packing its bags and moving farther away from me with each passing day. Our conversations dwindled to nothing, our interactions mere ghostly encounters. The man I once thought I'd grow old with had become a stranger, passing through the life of me and our soon-to-be child like a ship in the night. When I thought I'd faced the toughest battles, life proved me wrong. Giving birth to Daniel was both a miracle and a storm's beginning. Barely catching my breath from labor, the doctors hit me with news that felt like a punch to the gut. Daniel was sick, they said, he will be disabled, and everything that an ordinary child can do will become inaccessible to him. Hearing that, I felt my world tilt. It was one of those moments where everything slows down, and all you can hear is your heartbeat loud in your ears. But I had to be strong, for Daniel. I was reeling, trying to wrap my head around this new reality, when Alex walked into the hospital room. His face was stone, eyes cold, a harbinger of the storm to come. "Sarah, what's this I hear about Daniel being sick?" His voice was sharp, cutting through the sterile air of the hospital room. I swallowed, trying to find the words. "The doctors, they said he has a serious condition. But we can." "Serious condition?" Alex interrupted, his voice rising. "He is an invalid, a worthless person." "And whose fault is that, huh? You had to push for this, didn't you? At your age?" His words shocked me. "A worthless person? Alex, how can you say that? We wanted him, we tried for him." "Wanted?" He laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "I wanted a healthy child, Sarah. Not a lifetime burden. Do you have any idea how much this is going to cost us? How much he's going to need?" I felt my heart break, piece by piece. "He's your son, Alex. Our son. How can you talk like this?" Alex paced, a caged animal looking for an escape. "No, Sarah, I can't do this. I won't. I want a divorce." The word hung in the air, heavy and final. "A divorce?" I echoed, disbelief and pain mingling in my voice. "Yes. And I want it clean and quick. I'll take the house, you take the kid. That's it." I was speechless, watching the man I thought I knew transform into a stranger. "And what about Daniel?" My voice was barely a whisper. I want nothing to do with him. You'll have to sign papers saying I gave up all rights. That's my condition. The absurdity of the situation hit me then. This was no longer the man I married, this was someone else entirely. I agreed, not because I wanted to, but because I knew Daniel and I were better off without him. Leaving the house we shared, the life we built, felt like tearing away a part of myself. But as I held Daniel close, I knew it was the start of something new, something ours. Then, the final blow came. Friends told me Alex had moved someone in almost immediately after I left, a young, pregnant woman. The pieces fell into place, the late nights, the detachment. He'd been living a double life, and now he was starting a new chapter, without a backward glance. Starting over was no walk in the park. With Daniel in my arms and my life in shambles, I found myself on the doorstep of a new beginning. The house we moved into was modest, nothing like the one I'd left behind, but it was ours, and that made it perfect. I was ready to devote my whole life to my special baby. But the day the doctor told me there had been a mistake with Daniel's diagnosis was the day my world shifted on its axis. For years, I'd braced for a life of challenges, of endless doctor visits and sleepless nights. Then, suddenly, we were handed a clean slate. I'm terribly sorry for the error. Your son is perfectly healthy, he'd said, looking both relieved and embarrassed. I could have been angry, but all I felt was an overwhelming rush of gratitude. Daniel was going to be okay. We were going to be okay. I threw myself into motherhood with a vigor I didn't know I had. Those early years were a blur of milestones, of first words, first steps, and countless firsts that filled our days with joy and our hearts with love. My grandmother's inheritance was a blessing, a safety net that allowed me to focus on Daniel, without the weight of financial worries. When the time came, selling her house felt like closing one chapter and opening another, right here in our new home, where every corner whispered of new beginnings. Returning to work wasn't just a financial decision, it was about reclaiming a piece of myself that had been on pause. The library, with its familiar smell of books and the quiet hum of day-to-day business, welcomed me back like an old friend. Back to the grind, huh? Jake, my colleague, had said with a grin on my first day back. He'd been manning the fort while I was away, and his casual chaos was a stark contrast to my need for order. Yeah, someone's gotta keep you in line, I shot back, slipping into the easy banter that had always made our workspace lively. Adjusting to the rhythm of working life, of juggling schedules and snatching moments with Daniel between shifts, was a challenge, but one I embraced wholeheartedly. Daniel, for his part, thrived in school, his curiosity boundless, his energy infectious. Mom, did you know sharks never run out of teeth? If they lose one, another grows back, he'd say, bursting through the door with facts and stories that turned our dinner times into adventures. Our life, once shadowed by fear and uncertainty, was now lit by the steady glow of routine and the unexpected joys of daily discoveries. The library, once a quiet sanctuary, became a place of lively learning, not just for me, but for Daniel too, who saw it as a treasure trove of knowledge. Mom, when I grow up, I'm gonna read every book in here, Daniel declared one afternoon as he helped me reshelve books, his small hands struggling with the weight of a particularly thick volume on dinosaurs. I laughed, ruffling his hair. That's quite the goal, champ. But if anyone can do it, it's you. The Christmas party at Daniel's school was something straight out of a holiday card, twinkling lights, children's laughter echoing off the walls, and the air filled with the scent of pine and gingerbread. I was there, mingling with other parents, sipping on too sweet punch, and keeping an eye out for Daniel, who was a blur of energy and excitement among his peers. Suddenly, Daniel appeared by my side, his eyes sparkling with anticipation. Mom, you've got to meet Tommy, my best friend. His excitement was infectious, and I let him tug me through the crowd towards a boy who was looking equally eager. As we approached Tommy and his parents, my heart skipped a beat, then sank like a stone. There stood Alex, my ex-husband, with that woman, his new wife, the one he had left us for. The shock on his face mirrored mine, but any semblance of a civil reunion evaporated with his next actions. Alex's protective hand clamped down on Tommy's shoulder, pulling him back as if drawing a line in the sand. "Tommy, stay away from him," he barked, nodding towards Daniel with undisguised contempt. "I don't want you mixing with that boy. He's not right." The words were a slap, a brutal reminder of the man Alex had become. "Excuse me?" I managed, my voice sharp with disbelief and rising anger. "What did you just say about our son?" Alex, unfazed, met my gaze with that cold, arrogant look I remembered all too well. "You heard me. I'm not having my son play with someone defective." The ugliness of his words stung, but I squared my shoulders, refusing to let him see how deeply they cut. "Defective? Daniel is perfectly healthy, Alex. Not that you'd care enough to know." His smirk was infuriating, a clear indication he believed he had the upper hand. "Oh, I know you'd like to think everything's fine. But let's not pretend you didn't mess him up with your choices." Before I could retort, his wife, a bystander until now, chimed in, her voice laced with concern. "Let's not make a scene, darling. We're at a school event, remember?" Alex shrugged, his gaze still locked with mine. "She needs to hear the truth. Besides, we're doing much better now. My wife is rich, and her father owns the company I work for." He draped an arm around her, a show of possession more than affection. I looked at her, this woman who had unknowingly dismantled my life, and then back at Alex. "Doing better? By teaching your son to judge and look down on others? By spreading lies?" Alex laughed, a sound void of any warmth. "Oh, Sarah, always so dramatic. We've moved on to bigger and better things. Something you wouldn't understand." His words were meant to sting, to show off his supposedly better life. But looking at him, all I felt was pity. Money doesn't buy decency, Alex. Or kindness. As they walked away, Daniel looked up at me, his young face etched with questions and hurt. "Mom, why did he say those things? Why doesn't he want Tommy to be my friend?" I knelt down, taking Daniel's hands in mine, searching for the right words. "Sometimes, people say unkind things because they don't understand, or they're dealing with their own issues. It's not a reflection of you, my love. You are perfect just the way you are." Daniel nodded, though I could see he was still processing the harsh exchange. "Are we still going to have fun tonight?" he asked, his voice small. I smiled, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. "Of course, we are. Nothing and no one is going to ruin our night. Let's go enjoy the party, okay?" After the Christmas party debacle, I tried to push Alex and his hurtful words to the back of my mind. Life with Daniel was full enough, without dwelling on past pains. But fate, it seemed, wasn't done with us just yet. A few days after the party, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Curiosity got the better of me, and I answered. "Hello? Hi, is this Sarah?" The voice on the other end was hesitant, unsure. "Yes, speaking. Who's this?" It's Julie. Alex's wife." Her voice wavered, like she was bracing for an onslaught. I paused, taken aback. "Julie? What can I do for you?" There was a heavy sigh. I wanted to talk to you about what happened at the Christmas party. And, about Alex." I tensed, memories of Alex's words still fresh. "All right. What about him?" Julie was silent for a moment before continuing. "I heard what he said to Daniel. And to you. I didn't know about any of this. About how he left you, about Daniel. He told me a different story." Her admission sparked a mix of emotions in me, but I kept my voice even. "And what story did he tell you?" "That you two grew apart. That the divorce was mutual. He never mentioned. He never said anything about Daniel being sick or..." Julie trailed off, but her meaning hung heavy between us. I sighed, feeling an unexpected pang of sympathy for her. Julie, Alex has a way of twisting the truth to fit his narrative. What happened at the party, what he said. That's the real Alex. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way." She was quiet for a moment. I want to apologize, Sarah. For him. For what he said. It was unforgivable. And I'm going to confront him. He needs to take responsibility. We said our goodbyes, a mutual understanding hanging between us. After we hung up, I sat, phone in hand, pondering the strange turn of events. Alex's lies unraveling at the seams, and Julie, caught in the crossfire, seeking truth. 2 weeks later, after Julie's unexpected call, my phone rang, slicing through the quiet of the evening. The screen flashed his name, a reminder of a chapter one thought I had closed for good. With a sigh, I answered, bracing myself for whatever came next. Sarah, you've ruined everything. Alex's voice was sharp, tinged with desperation and anger. I pulled the phone away from my ear for a moment, taking a deep breath before responding. Ruin everything? Alex, whatever's happening is on you, not me. He was practically seething on the other end. Julie's leaving me. She found out about how I treated you, and then she got detectives on me. Found out I messed up again. I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. So, let me get this straight. Julie left you because you're the same lying cheat you've always been, and somehow this is my fault? It wouldn't have happened if you hadn't talked to her, he accused, his logic as flawed as ever. Alex, I didn't tell Julie to hire detectives. And I didn't make you cheat. You did that all on your own, I said, my voice firm, devoid of any sympathy I might have once had for him. There was a pause, and when he spoke again, his voice was laced with a desperation I hadn't heard before. I've lost everything, Sarah. Julie's dad fired me from the company. She's taking the house, the cars, everything. I have nothing. I shook my head, even though he couldn't see. And you think this is my problem because we were married once. We have Daniel. And I know I've been terrible, but I've changed, Sarah. I've realized everything now. Please, can we try again? For Daniel? The audacity of his request left me speechless for a moment. Alex, you haven't changed. You're only sorry because you got caught and lost everything. And even suggesting we try again? That ship didn't just sail, it sank. Daniel and we're doing fine. Better than fine, actually. And we don't need someone who only comes around when they've hit rock bottom. But I have nowhere else to go, he pleaded, his voice breaking. That's not my problem, Alex. You made your bed, and now you have to lie in it. Alone, I said, my tone final. He tried to argue, to bargain, but I cut him off. No, Alex. This is where it ends. You need to figure out your own life, without dragging us down with you. Goodbye. I hung up before he could say another word, the finality of the gesture making my heart race. It was done. I turned off my phone, not wanting any more disruptions for the evening. A couple of months after the whole debacle with Alex, I got a call out of the blue from Julie, his now ex-wife. She wanted to meet up, kids in tow, for a coffee chat. Curiosity piqued and a bit wary, I agreed. Daniel was always asking about Tommy, so I thought, why not? We met at a cozy little cafe downtown, a neutral ground of sorts. Julie was there with Tommy, both looking a bit apprehensive but hopeful. Daniel lit up at the sight of his half-brother, and within minutes, the kids were chattering away like old times, the awkwardness melting away under their shared excitement. Julie and I found a quiet table, coffee in hand, a world apart from the chaos of our children's laughter. So, I heard you finally went through with the divorce, I ventured, trying to tread lightly. She nodded, a mix of relief and resignation in her eyes. Yeah, I did. It was messy. But I'm out on the other side now. Feels like I can finally breathe again. I could relate, remembering my own tangled exit from Alex's life. I'm glad for you, Julie. It's not easy, walking away, but sometimes it's the only way forward. Julie sipped her coffee, then looked at me, a determination in her gaze. He showed his true colors, through and through. Made the divorce hell. But I'm glad it's over. And I've been thinking, our boys, they're half-brothers. Despite Alex being, well, Alex, I don't want Tommy growing up without knowing Daniel. Her suggestion took me by surprise, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. I'd like that, I admitted. Daniel's always asking about Tommy. They're good for each other, it seems. Watching our sons play, I couldn't help but marvel at how life had turned out. A few years ago, I never would have imagined sitting here, chatting with you, watching our kids play together, I said, a smile tugging at my lips. Julie chuckled, a sound of genuine amusement. Life's funny that way, isn't it? Throws you curves, and you end up finding family in the most unexpected places. Our conversation flowed easily after that, the initial awkwardness giving way to a shared understanding. We talked about the kids, about moving forward, about building a life after Alex. It was cathartic, in a way I hadn't anticipated. Driving home, Daniel buzzing with stories about his afternoon with Tommy, I realized that this was what moving forward looked like. It wasn't just about leaving the past behind, it was about building something new, something better, from the pieces. It all started in a way that you'd least expect. My name's Olivia, and I was just another face in the corporate world, grinding away my days until Jack walked into my life. He was a client for the firm I worked at, and our first meeting was anything but ordinary. There was this spark, an instant click, something that made the air crackle with energy whenever we were in the same room. Olivia, right? Heard you're the wizard with numbers around here, Jack said on the day we met, his voice laced with a grin that I could hear before I saw it. Wizard might be stretching it, but I know my way around them, I replied, trying to keep my composure. Who was this guy, coming in and throwing words like wizard around? Our conversations quickly moved from strictly business to personal interests, dreams, and eventually, our views on life. It was like finding a piece of myself that I didn't know was missing. Jack was charming, not just in a smooth talker kind of way, but genuinely caring. He listened, really listened, and that was rare. We started seeing each other outside of work, and each date felt like we were peeling back layers, revealing more and more of ourselves. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. I can't believe you actually enjoy pineapple on pizza, I teased during one of our dinner dates. Hey, don't knock it till you try it. It's the perfect combo of sweet and savory, Jack defended, his eyes lighting up with the kind of passion people reserve for sports teams or favorite bands. That sounds like something only a madman would say. I shot back, laughter bubbling up from the pit of my stomach. Jack's laugh joined mine, filling the space around us with warmth. Those moments felt like we were in our little world, far away from the prying eyes and expectations of reality. 6 months flew by in a blur of shared smiles, whispered secrets, and dreams laid bare. Then, almost impulsively, Jack proposed. It was messy, unplanned, and in the middle of our favorite dive bar. No grand gestures or hidden photographers, just raw emotion. Olivia, I know this isn't fancy. I don't have a ring yet, and we're surrounded by the smell of stale beer, but I can't imagine my life without you in it. Marry me? His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. In that moment, I realized how deeply I had fallen. Yes, but if we're doing this, we're doing it our way. No fuss, just us. Our marriage was quick, just like our decision. We didn't need a big wedding. All that mattered was the promise we made to each other. We moved into Jack's place, a cozy little house that suddenly felt like home because we were together. Life with Jack was like living in a bubble, perfect and undisturbed, until Linda, his mom, decided it was her mission to burst it. Living next door, she had this uncanny timing of showing up right when we least expected or wanted her to. One lazy Sunday afternoon, as Jack and I were lounging on the couch, there was a knock on the door. Before we could even pretend we weren't home, Linda barged in like a hurricane on a mission. Olivia, darling, how are you? She bellowed, her voice carrying that peculiar mix of concern and accusation. I'm good, Linda. Just enjoying the weekend, I replied, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. Enjoying, huh? You know what would make weekends better? A grandchild running around. She shot back, her eyes darting between Jack and me, as if her mere gaze could impregnate me. Jack, ever the peacemaker, tried to lighten the mood. Mom, we've talked about this. We're not in a rush. Linda wasn't having any of it. Not in a rush? I had Jack when I was your age, Olivia. The clock is ticking, you know. Her words hung in the air, a constant reminder of the pressure she was piling on us. It wasn't just the occasional comments anymore, it was every single visit. Dinners were marred by her pointed questions and comparisons to her friends' children, who were apparently popping out grandchildren left, right, and center. One evening, she overstepped more than usual. We were at her place for what was supposed to be a peaceful dinner. The main course wasn't the only thing served, Linda dished out her ultimatum as well. Olivia, I've been patient, but I need to know. Are you even capable of giving me grandchildren? Linda's voice was sharp, each word slicing through the pretense of a familial meal. I was taken aback, anger boiling in my veins. Linda, that's way out of line. We'll have kids when and if we want to. And when we're ready, not because you're demanding it. Jack finally found his voice, though it was softer than I'd hoped. Mom, Olivia's right. This isn't just about what you want. But Linda was relentless. Fine, if you won't do it for me, do it for yourselves. But I want you to get checked out. I need to know the problem isn't from your side. The nerve of her, as if bearing children was some family duty I was failing at. Jack looked at me, his eyes apologetic. Maybe you should, Liv. Just to get her off our backs. I agreed, but on one condition. Fine, but you're getting checked too, Jack. Fair's fair. Okay. Anything for peace, he conceded, though I could tell he was just as annoyed. The whole ordeal of getting tested was humiliating and invasive, not to mention completely unnecessary in my eyes. But it turned out to be an eye-opener in ways we hadn't anticipated. Jack's results came back, and the irony of the situation wasn't lost on us. The issue Linda was so concerned about, the delay in expanding our little family, stemmed from her precious son. The aftermath was a blend of vindication and sorrow. I wasn't sure how to feel. I wanted to rage at Linda, to throw her words back in her face, but I also saw the man I loved crumbling under the weight of his own imperfections. Linda's reaction was predictably unsupportive. Instead of rallying around her son, she doubled down on her blame game, pointing fingers at me for not being understanding enough, for not caring for Jack in his time of need. And Jack? Well, he wasn't the same. The light in his eyes dimmed, replaced by shadows of doubt and shame. He retreated into himself, leaving me to fend off Linda's barbs alone. Jack's struggle with the news about his fertility hit him harder than a freight train. Instead of facing it head-on, he looked for escape in booze, letting the bottles drown out his sorrows and shame. Nights turned into a blur, with him either passed out or staring into nothing, a whiskey bottle his only company. One evening, I couldn't just watch him spiral anymore. Jack, this ain't the way, you know. We gotta face this thing together, not let it tear us apart, I said, my voice a mix of frustration and worry. He just scoffed, the smell of alcohol heavy in his words. Face what, Olivia? That I'm a failure? That I can't give you kids? What's the damn point? It's not about that, Jack. It's about us, finding a way through. The doctors said it was unlikely, not impossible. Maybe see other doctors, explore other options. I tried to get through to him, but it was like talking to a wall. Other options? You mean raising some other guy's kid? That ain't gonna be my child, Olivia. How am I supposed to live with that? His words were like daggers, but I knew it was the booze and pain talking. Any child we raise would be ours, Jack. Ours. It doesn't matter how they come to us, I countered, but it was like I was speaking a foreign language to him. He just shook his head, sinking further into the couch and his despair. You don't get it, Liv. You'll never get it. That night was just the start. Jack began blowing off work, first with sick calls, then not even bothering. His job, once his pride, now seemed like just another burden. Linda, his mom, only added fuel to the fire. "Olivia's not doing enough for you, Jack. A real wife would have you out of this slump," she accused one day, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. I had enough and shot back. "Doing enough? I'm trying to keep us afloat here, Linda. But he needs more than just me yelling at him. He needs help, real help, not just your complaints." Linda glared at me, her voice icy. "My son doesn't need some shrink. He needs his family. And a wife who's actually there for him." Her words stung, but I knew standing by Jack was all I was doing, even as he slipped further away, becoming a ghost in his own life. I tried again one night, the silence heavy between us. "Jack, we can't go on like this. I can't watch you tear yourself apart. I love you, damn it." For a moment, there was a glimmer of the old Jack in his eyes. "I don't know how to stop this, Liv. I'm lost." It was a crack in his armor, but promises made in desperation are fragile. And as time went on, the depth of Jack's descent became painfully clear. The last straw was his job. They fired him for showing up drunk, if he showed up at all. After that, he just lay on the couch all day, a shell of the man I married. Whenever I tried to reach out, to pull him back, he'd just head to Linda's, seeking refuge in the one place that never seemed to help. Days blurred into each other, each one a repeat of the last, Jack on the couch, lost in his own misery, and me, juggling two jobs just to keep us afloat. It felt like we were stuck in a never-ending storm, with no way out. But then, something changed. It was a regular Thursday evening when I found out. I'd been feeling off for a while, sick in the mornings, and just not myself. On a whim, I picked up a pregnancy test. I remember standing in our cramped bathroom, waiting for the result, my heart hammering in my chest. When the positive sign showed up, I couldn't believe it. I was pregnant. I remember the moment I decided to tell Jack. He was on the couch, staring off into nothing, a half-empty bottle of beer in his hand. My heart was hammering in my chest, but I had this crazy hope that maybe, just maybe, this news would snap him out of whatever hole he'd fallen into. "Jack, I have something to tell you. I'm pregnant," I said, the words feeling both heavy and light at the same time. Jack's reaction was nothing like I'd hoped. He looked at me like I'd slapped him. "Pregnant? How the hell is that possible? You know what the doctor said about me." I tried to keep my voice steady, to explain the situation calmly. "Jack, the doctor said it was unlikely, not impossible. This baby is ours." But Jack wasn't having any of it. He got up, his anger palpable. "Ours? Don't give me that crap, Olivia. You've been cheating on me, haven't you? That's the only way this makes sense." Before I could even process what he was saying, Linda barged in, her timing as impeccable as ever. "What's all this shouting about?" she demanded. Jack was quick to fill her in, his words twisted by bitterness. "Olivia's pregnant. Claims it's mine, but we both know that's a lie." Linda turned on me, her eyes flashing with accusation. "You ungrateful little. After everything we've done for you, you go and betray my son like this?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Betray him? "Linda, I've been here, trying to make things work, even when Jack gave up. This baby is his, whether you like it or not." The argument spiraled from there, with both of them hurling accusations and demands. Linda, in her infinite wisdom, decided I should leave. "Get out of this house, Olivia. We don't need a liar and a cheat under this roof." I was so tired of the fighting, the accusations, the endless cycle of despair. So, I agreed. "Fine. I'll go. But not for you. For this baby, who deserves better than this mess." Jack didn't stop me. He didn't say a word as I walked out the door, my heart heavy, but my resolve strong. This baby was my glimmer of hope, and I was going to do everything in my power to protect it, to give it the life it deserved. Away from all the chaos, away from a love that had turned so toxic it was unrecognizable. Starting over wasn't easy, not by a long shot. There I was, pregnant, alone, and frankly, a bit scared. But there was this fire in me, too, a determination to make things right for the little one growing inside me. I moved into a small, cozy apartment. It wasn't much, but it was ours, mine and the baby's. I picked up extra shifts at work, anything to make sure we'd have what we needed. Nights were the hardest, though. It was just me and my thoughts, and sometimes, the silence was too loud. One evening, after a long day at work, I sat on the worn-out sofa, rubbing my belly, talking to the baby. "It's just you and me, kiddo. But we're gonna make it, you'll see. I'm gonna make sure of it." That's when the phone rang. It was my sister, Lucy. She'd been my rock through all of this. "Hey, Liv. How are you holding up?" Lucy's voice was always a balm, soothing and warm. "We're hanging in there. Some days are better than others," I admitted, not wanting to worry her too much. "Listen, Liv, you're not alone in this. Remember that. If you need anything, a break, someone to talk to, or just a night off from cooking, you call me, okay?" Her words meant the world to me. "Thanks, Luce. I really appreciate it." We talked a bit more about nothing in particular. Lucy always had a way of making me laugh, even when I felt like crying. After hanging up, I felt a little lighter, a bit more ready to face the world. As the weeks turned into months, I got to know every inch of that little apartment. I decorated a corner for the baby, putting together a makeshift nursery. It wasn't much, but it was filled with love. As my due date approached, I felt a mix of excitement and nerves. I was about to meet my baby, to start this new chapter for Real. And even though I was doing it on my own, I knew we'd be okay. Life as a single mom had its set of challenges, but me and my little boy, Max, we were doing all right. He was growing up fast, all smiles and curiosity, making all the tough times worth it. Then, one day, life decided to throw us another curveball. I was at the park with Max, pushing him on the swings, when I ran into a face from the past, Tina, an old friend of Jack's. Her expression was a mix of surprise and something else, maybe pity, when she saw us. "Olivia? Wow, it's been ages. How are you holding up?" Her voice was cautious, like she was walking on eggshells. "We're managing, thanks. Max keeps me on my toes," I said, trying to keep the conversation light. "Yeah, I heard about, well, everything. I'm sorry, Olivia. For what it's worth, Jack's been going through a rough patch, too." Tina's attempt at being diplomatic was awkward at best. "Oh?" I prompted, not sure I wanted to know but asking anyway. "He got married again. Had another kid, but things didn't go well. There were problems with the baby. He was born, not quite healthy. And then Jack got into trouble for not paying support. It's a mess." Tina's words tumbled out in a rush. Hearing about Jack's troubles stirred up a storm of emotions in me. Part of me felt vindicated, seeing him face consequences for once. But there was no joy in it, especially hearing about another child caught in the middle of his mess. "Life has a way of catching up with you, I guess," I said, my voice neutral. Tina nodded, awkwardly shifting from one foot to the other. "Yeah, it does. Look, Olivia, I know it's none of my business, but, are you alright? After everything?" I looked at Max, who was laughing, urging me to push him higher on the swings. "We're more than alright, Tina. We've moved on. And we're happy, really happy." That night, as I tucked Max into bed, I thought about Jack and his other child. My heart ached for that little one, caught in a situation they didn't choose. I whispered a silent prayer for them, hoping they'd find some peace amidst the chaos. Life with Max was a whirlwind of school runs, soccer games, and endless questions. He was my little man, growing up too fast, and I was doing my best to keep up. Our routine was hectic but happy, until one day, a blast from the past turned our world upside down. It was just another day, me and Max doing our usual grocery run, when out of nowhere, Linda, my ex-mother-in-law, shows up. It was like bumping into a ghost from a past life I'd worked hard to forget. As soon as she saw us, her eyes lit up, especially when they landed on Max. Without a second thought, she swooped in, trying to hug him. Max, who's not used to strangers, especially not her, hid behind me. "Olivia, let me see my grandson. He looks so healthy, not like the other one," Linda said, a twisted sort of pride in her voice that made my skin crawl. "Back off, Linda. You've got no right to come here and make demands. Especially talking like that about a sick child. It's disgusting," I snapped, putting myself between her and Max. She huffed, her face all twisted up in anger. "You can't keep me from him, Olivia. He's my grandson too. I have rights." "Yeah? Well, it's funny you suddenly remember you've got a grandson now. And as for rights, you lost those the minute you sided with Jack, calling me every name under the sun. Forget it. You're not coming anywhere near Max," I shot back, every word laced with years of pent-up frustration. We left her standing there, fuming. But it didn't end at the store. Later that day, she called, her voice all sweet and poisonous at the same time. "Olivia, you're making a mistake. I'll sue if I have to. I want to see my grandson," Linda threatened, thinking she could bully me into submission. I held the phone away from my ear for a moment, taking a deep breath to steady myself. "You really want to go down that road, Linda? Because if we end up in court, I'll make sure everyone knows the kind of person you really are. How you treated me, how you talk about your other grandchild. You think a judge will look kindly on that?" There was silence on the line for a few beats, and I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. "You wouldn't dare," she finally hissed. "Try me, Linda. I've kept my mouth shut for too long. But I'm done playing nice. Max and we're doing just fine without you. So, you go ahead and try your luck in court. We'll see how far it gets you." After a moment, she hung up, and that was the last I heard from her. I wasn't sure if she believed I'd follow through or if the thought of her dirty laundry being aired in public was too much for her. Either way, Max and I were left in peace. As I tucked him into bed that night, I thought about how far we'd come and how much we'd overcome. "Everything's gonna be alright, buddy," I whispered, more to myself than to him. That night, I realized no matter what came our way, we'd face it together, just like we always had. And no one, not even Linda with her threats and bitterness, could take that away from us. Life after Linda's threat had been strangely peaceful. I'd braced for a storm that never came, and in its absence, Max and I found our rhythm again. That peace was shattered when Jack showed up out of the blue. It had been years since I last saw him, and here he was, standing at my door, looking worn and tired. "Olivia, can we talk?" Jack's voice was low, hesitant. I hesitated, my hand on the door, ready to close it on him and this part of my past. "Talk? After all this time, you just show up and want to talk?" I know I've got no right to ask anything of you. But I've been through a lot, and I've changed, Olivia. I need help," he said, a hint of desperation creeping into his voice. "Changed? You think saying you've changed is enough? You walked away, Jack. You chose that path, not me. Max and we built a life without you. Why should I let you back into it?" Jack looked down, unable to meet my gaze. "I'm not asking to come back like nothing happened. I don't know where else to go." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the shell of the man I once loved. It would have been easy to feel pity, to open the door and let him back in. But life had taught me better. "Jack, you need to understand something. It's not just about me anymore. There's Max to think about. And I won't let anyone hurt him or disrupt the life we have. You say you've changed, but I can't just take your word for it. You need to prove it, not for me, but for yourself." Jack nodded, a semblance of understanding dawning in his eyes. "I get it, Olivia. I really do," I'll try to do better. That's all anyone can ask, Jack. But for now, you need to leave. Max and I have a life, a good one. And I'm not ready to risk that. He took a step back, finally lifting his eyes to meet mine. I understand. Take care of Max, Olivia. He deserves the best. I will, Jack. I always have. Closing the door on Jack was like closing a chapter of my life I never thought I'd revisit. It was hard, but in that moment, I knew I'd made the right decision. Later, as I watched Max play in the backyard, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows over the lawn, I realized how far we'd come. We'd faced down ghosts from our past and stood our ground, stronger and more united than ever. Mom, look, Max called, waving at me from his makeshift fort. I smiled, walking over to him. What is it, buddy? Just wanted to show you the fort. It's our castle, he said, his eyes shining with pride. Our castle, huh? I like the sound of that. It's our little kingdom, and we protect it together, I said, ruffling his hair. Yeah, together, Max agreed, a big grin on his face. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I knew that no matter what the future held, we'd face it head-on, as a team. Our little family of two was a force to be reckoned with, built on love, resilience, and a firm stand against the challenges life threw our way. And that was all we needed. Born into a world where my last name opens more doors than I care to walk through, you could say I had it all laid out for me. My dad's the big boss of a company you've probably seen tick across the stock exchange screen more times than you've cursed the morning alarm. Yes, that kind of rich. But if you're expecting tales of a golden girl, draped in designer and sipping champagne for breakfast, you've got the wrong story. Me? I've always kept it real, feet firmly on the ground. Money's nice, sure, but it's not everything. I chose a different path, one that's led me to places money can't buy and experiences no gold card can fetch. Charity work, helping those in need, and living a life that's, well, ordinary. That's me, Jessica. Not the heiress, just Jessica. So, I was stuck in one of those typical evenings where my friend Sarah decided we all needed to get out more. We ended up at this dive bar downtown, the kind where the beer's cheap and the lights are dim enough to hide your regrets. Sarah was all hyped up, going on about some guy she met online. You've gotta meet him, Jess. He's totally your type, she kept saying. My type? Since when did she decide she knew my type? Anyway, we're there, and in walks this guy. Not Sarah's online prince, but another dude, Alex. He was there with some friends, looking as out of place as a cat at a dog show. He wasn't dressed to impress, just a simple tee, jeans, and this easy smile that kind of lit up the room. We got to talking, and it was easy. Like, really easy. He worked some manager job at a place I'd never heard of, nothing fancy, but he talked about it with this passion that was kinda infectious. You really dig your job, huh? I remember asking, sipping on my third beer. Absolutely, Alex shot back, leaning in. Every day's a challenge. But hey, I'm not here to bore you with work talk. What about you? Sarah mentioned charity work? I shrugged, trying to downplay it. Yes, a bit of this and that. Just trying to do my bit, you know? That's cool. Really cool, he said, and I could tell he meant it. Not in a trying to impress you sort of way, but genuinely. The night rolled on, our group mingling, but Alex and I kind of stuck together, chatting about everything and nothing. It was refreshing, talking to someone who wasn't trying to sell me on some investment or brag about their latest acquisition. As the night was winding down, Alex got this look in his eye, like he was working up to something. Hey, Jessica, I know this is kind of forward, but would you want to grab dinner with me sometime? Just us? I remember feeling this mix of surprise and excitement. Sure, I said, trying to sound cool about it. I'd like that. On the way home, Sarah was all giggles and I told you so's. I just smiled, thinking about the evening. Alex was a breath of fresh air in my often too stale world. Little did I know how much things were about to change. It wasn't long before going out turned into hanging out at each other's places, which, let's be real, mostly meant my cozy apartment because Alex's roommates were a circus and a half. One evening, sprawled on the couch after devouring what might be the world's most average takeout pizza, Alex turned to me, his eyes serious, but his tone light. "Jessica, how do you feel about making this a more permanent arrangement?" he asked, crumbs still clinging to the corner of his mouth. I raised an eyebrow. "You proposing we split a Netflix account or something more along the lines of a lease?" He chuckled, brushing off the crumbs. "Well, I was thinking more like a life together. But hey, we can start with Netflix." The simplicity of it, the straightforwardness, no grand gestures or dramatic backdrops, just us, in our element. It felt right. "Alex, if you're asking what I think you're asking. Yes. 1,000 times, yes." And just like that, with the aroma of cheap pizza as our witness, we decided to tie the knot. It was swift, sure, but when you know, you know. Telling our families was the next hurdle. My folks, well, they've always been about the "as long as you're happy" mantra, but this was putting it to the test. Dad, with his business empire, and Mom, the socialite, they had visions of me settling down with someone more in our circle. I broke the news over dinner, the fancy kind, where you're not sure which fork to use for the salad. "Mom, Dad, I'm getting married to Alex," I said, the words tumbling out in a rush. Dad paused, fork midair. "Alex? The manager chap? Well, that's quick." Mom simply smiled, a bit too tightly. "Dear, are you sure? This is rather sudden, isn't it?" But I was firm. "Yes, I'm sure. He's amazing, and we're really happy together." Their skepticism was palpable, but so was their love. "Well, if he makes you happy, darling," Mom conceded, and Dad nodded in agreement. Alex's folks were a whole different ball game. We went over to their place, a cozy little house that seemed always to smell like fresh cookies, or something equally comforting. Judy and Martin, they were as down-to-earth as they come, and they welcomed me like I'd always been a part of the family. "Alex tells us you're setting a date?" Martin asked, passing me a plate of those infamous cookies. "Yes, we're thinking sooner rather than later. Small ceremony, nothing fancy," I replied, trying to gauge their reaction. Judy beamed. "Oh, sweetheart, that's wonderful. We're just thrilled for you both." Their warmth was enveloping, a stark contrast to the cautious optimism of my own parents. It was clear, right from the get-go, that our worlds were different, but the common ground was the genuine happiness for me and Alex. Planning the wedding, we were on the same page: keep it simple, keep it us. A small ceremony, close friends and family, and an open bar because, as Alex put it, "If we're doing this, we're making sure everyone's having a good time." And that's how it went down. A swift engagement, not because we were rushing, but because everything just clicked into place. Amid the whirlwind, there were quiet moments, looks shared between us that said, "We're doing the right thing." And we really were. Living with Alex started off as everything I'd hoped for and more. We were like two peas in a pod, making our little corner of the world in that cozy, modern apartment I had rented. It was ours, filled with love, laughter, and a ton of takeout containers, because, let's face it, neither of us were winning any awards in the kitchen. It wasn't long before I started noticing how Alex's parents, Judy and Martin, had this way of dropping hints about things they liked or needed whenever they came over. At first, it was subtle, almost cute. "Oh, Jessica, that's a lovely coffee maker. Must make mornings a breeze," Judy would say, eyeing our shiny new appliance with a gleam in her eye. Or Martin, "This sofa is just divine. Our old one's been giving me a right pain in the back, you know." Wanting to be the good daughter-in-law, I'd surprise them with gifts here and there. A coffee maker for Judy, a comfortable new sofa for their living room, and so on. Their initial reactions were always the same, a mix of surprise and a little bit of guilt. "Oh, Jessica, you shouldn't have." "This is too much," Judy would exclaim, her hands fluttering to her chest. "But, you know, humans are funny creatures. Give them an inch, and they'll take a mile." Those initial protests faded away, replaced by a growing list of subtle hints that were about as subtle as a brick through a window. "Dinner at your folks' place was lovely, dear. Did you see that new TV they have? Crystal clear. Ours is practically ancient." Alex would relay his parents' latest comments, oblivious to the change in their tone. One evening, after I'd just dropped a not-so-small fortune on a fancy new TV for them, Alex and I were curled up on the couch, my head resting in his lap. "They really loved the TV, babe. You're amazing, you know that," he said, his fingers running through my hair. I sighed, the weight of their expectations starting to press down on me. "Alex, do they expect us to keep doing this? It's getting a bit much, don't you think?" He paused, his hand stopping mid-stroke. "What do you mean? They're just happy, that's all." "Happy or taking advantage?" I pushed back, sitting up to look at him. "It feels like we're their personal shopping service." Alex was taken aback, his brow furrowing. "They're not like that, Jess. They're just not used to nice things, that's all." "But where does it end, Alex?" "It's like they've got a taste for it now, and they're not looking back," I argued, frustration creeping into my voice. The conversation ended with an uneasy truce, but it was clear we were on different pages. Judy and Martin's gratitude had morphed into entitlement, and it was putting a strain on us, on me. I loved Alex, but I wasn't about to become a bottomless ATM for his parents. When my dad's company hit the skids, it felt like the rug was yanked out from under my feet. That cushy life? Poof, gone. And with it, the whole dynamic of my relationship took a nosedive. The shift wasn't gradual, it was like flipping a switch from daylight to darkness. I had to break the news to Alex and his folks, and let me tell you, that was a conversation I'd been dreading. "Listen up, things are gonna get tight. Dad's company's tanking, and well, we're in for a rough ride," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but the tremor was there, betraying my nerves. Alex's reaction was a gut punch. "You're kidding me, right? What do you mean things are gonna get tight? You're telling me we can't live like we used to because of your dad's mess?" His words were like ice, and for a second, I wished the floor would swallow me whole. Judy and Martin's faces were no better, their disappointment barely masked. "This is quite the situation you put us in, Jessica," Martin added, his tone dripping with reproach. And just like that, the warmth and camaraderie we once shared evaporated, replaced by this cold expectation that somehow, I was to blame for my family's financial downturn. Moving in with them was hell dressed up as a temporary solution. Our once independent life got swapped for a guest room that felt more like a cell in the house of the two people who clearly saw us as a nuisance. The atmosphere was charged with tension, every day a reminder that I'd somehow failed them. "We're cutting back on everything because of this," Judy would remind me, her voice sharp, as she served dinner that was a far cry from the lavish meals we used to enjoy. And Martin, always with a comment on saving costs. "Make sure those lights are off. We're not running a charity here." But Alex, he was the hardest to bear. The man I married seemed to have vanished, replaced by someone who saw me as a letdown. "Can't you do something? Talk to your dad? It's like you don't even care we're living like this," he'd snap, anger flaring over the smallest things. Our conversations, once easy and filled with future plans, now were minefields. Every word I said was a potential trigger for another outburst. "I thought marrying you meant security, not this struggle," he'd throw at me during arguments, his words slicing through me. It was clear we weren't just dealing with financial stress. This was a test of our relationship, a revelation of true colors under pressure. I was stuck in the middle, battling the disillusionment from my husband and his parents, while grappling with my own sense of failure. Judy's birthday dinner was supposed to be this cozy family thing at some upscale restaurant, a break from the constant tension. But it turned into the showdown of a lifetime. I should have seen it coming, the way things had been going at their place. We're all sitting there, menu in hand, and I'm trying to keep the peace, just blend into the background. That plan got torpedoed the second orders started flying. Alex, with this grin that made my skin crawl, goes, "Let's get the steak and the lobster for us," and he throws a look my way, 1 part smug, 2 parts cruel. Jessica can do with the soup of the day. Gotta save where we can, right? They all laugh like it's the best joke they've heard in ages. Judy adds her 2 cents. Absolutely, can't have Jessica overspending now, can we? I felt this flush of heat, not embarrassment, but pure fury. Really? Soup? What's this, some kind of sick joke? I snapped back, my voice sharper than I intended. Oh, come on, Jessica. It's just a bit of fun, Alex said, that smirk still plastered on his face. That's when I lost it. Fun? This is your idea of fun? When the chips are down, you just show how petty you really are. I can't believe I fell for your act. You could hear a pin drop. The whole restaurant was watching now, the awkwardness off the charts. I didn't sit back down. Keep your fancy dishes and your pathetic jokes. I'm out, I said, standing up so fast my chair nearly toppled over. The noise echoed, turning more heads our way. Alex reached out, trying to play the peacemaker. Jessica, don't. Let's not make this a scene. A scene? You think I care about making a scene after that stunt? This is about respect, something you clearly have none of. I yanked my arm free and made for the exit, the weight of their stares on my back. Stepping out into the night felt like breaking out of prison. My phone was blowing up, Alex no doubt, trying to do damage control. I ignored it, my mind made up. I drove back to their place, a storm of emotions brewing inside. How had things gone so sour? Alex and I were a team, or so I thought. But that dinner? It was a slap in the face, a wake-up call I couldn't ignore. Back at the house, I packed my bags in record time, each folded shirt a reminder of the life I was leaving behind. It wasn't just about leaving a place, it was about leaving a relationship that had shown its true colors. I turned off my phone, cutting off the barrage of messages. The silence was eerie, but welcome. That night wasn't just the end of a disastrous dinner, it was the close of a chapter one had no interest in revisiting. After the disaster that was Judy's birthday dinner, I found myself driving to my parents' house. The night was quiet, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. By the time I pulled up to their driveway, my decision was made. I needed sanctuary, yes, but more than that, I needed advice, something only my dad could offer. Walking into the house, the familiarity of it all was both comforting and jarring. Mom was asleep, but Dad was up, sitting in his study, surrounded by papers that seemed less important the moment I stepped in. Jessica? What are you doing here at this hour? Is everything okay? He stood up, concern etching his face. I took a deep breath, the events of the evening pouring out of me in a flood. I told him about the dinner, about Alex and his parents, and how I felt like I'd been reduced to nothing but a source of income for them. Dad listened in silence, his expression hardening with every word. When I finished, he sighed, a sound that carried years of experience and a hint of sorrow. Jessica, I saw this coming. I just hoped I was wrong, he finally said, his voice steady but filled with empathy. How could I have been so blind, Dad? I thought Alex. I thought we were different, I said, feeling the weight of my naivety. He walked over, putting an arm around my shoulders. You wanted to see the best in him, in them. There's no fault in that. But people show their true colors in tough times. It's a hard lesson, but an important one. I nodded, the reality of his words sinking in. But what do I do now? I can't go back there. You'll stay here, for starters. As for the rest, we'll figure it out together, he assured me, his confidence a balm to my frayed nerves. Then, he shared something that took me by surprise. You know, the company's situation isn't as dire as it seems. We're actually on the verge of a breakthrough. It was a strategic move, a way to weed out the opportunists. I stared at him, stunned. So, you mean to say we're not broke? He chuckled, a sound that was part relief, part amusement. Far from it. But it was important to see who would stick around when the chips were down. Unfortunately, Alex and his family showed their true selves. The revelation was a lot to process. My anger towards Alex and his parents was now mixed with a sense of vindication. They had revealed their true motives, and in doing so, had freed me from a future of manipulation and deceit. "Dad, I don't know whether to be relieved or furious," I admitted, the emotions battling inside me. "Be both. It's okay. But remember, this experience has taught you something invaluable about people and their intentions. Use it, learn from it," he advised, his words grounding me. Walking up to Judy and Martin's house the next day felt like heading into the lion's den. I was ready for a showdown, but nothing could have prepared me for the cold reception I got. Alex was standing there, divorce papers in hand, with a look that could only be described as triumphant disdain. "Here you go. Let's get this over with," he said, practically shoving the papers at me. His parents were hovering behind, barely containing their glee. "Finally getting rid of the freeloader," Judy snickered, and Martin nodded in agreement, a smug smile plastered across his face. Alex joined in. "Yes, turns out you're just an ordinary dummy without your daddy's money. Thought you'd cry, but guess what? We don't need a tearful mess around here." Their words stung, but not in the way they expected. I felt a bizarre mix of anger and liberation. I looked at the papers, then at them, and without a word, signed where I needed to. As I did, their smiles widened, thinking they'd won. But I had the last laugh. Pulling out a newspaper from my bag, I slapped it down on the table with more force than necessary. "Thought you might find this interesting," I said, my voice dripping with unrestrained satisfaction. The headline screamed about my dad's company making a monumental comeback, profits soaring higher than ever. Watching their faces drain of color was a sight I'd pay to see again. Judy and Martin's smugness vanished, replaced by shock, then desperation. Alex's arrogance crumbled, leaving him looking like a child who'd just lost his favorite toy. Judy suddenly switched gears, stepping towards me with arms wide open. "Oh, my sweet girl, it's all a big misunderstanding. Let's hug it out." Martin, ever the opportunist, chimed in. "Let's not rush things. Sit down, have a coffee, and we can talk this through." And Alex, oh, Alex, he was the picture of regret. "I was wrong, okay? We can fix this. I want to make everything right. Please." Their sudden change of heart was almost comical. Almost. I couldn't help but laugh, a deep, hearty sound that felt cleansing. "You three are something else, you know that? But here's a newsflash for you, I'm done. Done with the lies, the manipulation, and the so-called family that only values me for my bank account." I turned to leave, their protests and pleas fading into the background. They called after me, a mix of desperation and disbelief in their voices, but I didn't look back. Not this time. After the spectacle at Judy and Martin's house, I was done. Not just with them, but with the whole sorry saga that had become my life. I needed a fresh start, a clean slate. So, I took some time, holed up at my folks' place, getting my head and heart back in the game. One afternoon, a couple of weeks after the divorce was finalized, I was out for coffee with Sarah, my ever-supportive friend who had been there through it all. "Girl, you look like a weight's been lifted," she commented, sipping her latte. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. "You have no idea. It's like I can finally breathe again." Sarah leaned in, her expression turning serious. "So, what's next for you, Jess? You've got a clean slate now." I thought about it, stirring my coffee absent-mindedly. "I'm not sure, but I'm excited to find out. Maybe I'll travel, pick up some of the charity work I had to put on hold. As for love," I paused, giving her a wry smile. "I think I'll give that a miss for a while. Just make sure you're doing what makes you happy, okay? You deserve it after all that drama," she said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "Thanks, Sarah. That's the plan." Not long after that conversation, my phone started buzzing with calls and messages from Alex. He was pleading, saying he'd changed, that we could start over. His parents even got in on the act, sending messages filled with apologies and invitations to talk things over. Sitting in my room, phone in hand, I couldn't help but laugh. The sheer audacity was almost admirable. Almost. I typed out a response, one I'd been mulling over for days. Alex, moving on means moving forward, not going back to what broke you. I wish you all the best, but this is where our paths end for good. Take care. Hitting send felt like closing the final chapter of a book I'd been stuck in for too long. And just like that, I was ready to start writing a new one. The next few months were a blur of activity. I threw myself into my work, took up volunteering with a vengeance, and even booked a solo trip to a place I'd always wanted to visit. Life was full, and for the first time in a long while, it was fulfilling too. One evening, sitting on a balcony overlooking a bustling street in a far-off city, I realized I'd found what I'd been searching for all along: peace. The drama, the heartache, the betrayal, it all seemed like a distant memory. My phone buzzed with a new message, but this time, it was from a number I didn't recognize. Hesitantly, I opened it. It was from someone I'd met during my travels, someone who'd made me laugh and think in equal measure. "Hey, Jessica. How about dinner when you're back? No expectations, just food and good company." I stared at the message, a smile slowly spreading across my face. Maybe it was time to open my heart again, but on my terms, at my pace. "Yes, I'd like that," I typed back, hitting send before I could second-guess myself. Looking out at the city lights, I felt a sense of excitement for the future. I had moved on, not just from Alex and his family, but from the person I was when I was with them. I was stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next. My life's pretty straightforward. I'm all about fitness, health, and now, apparently, drama. I'm 26, juggling my job as a fitness trainer and my health blog. That's how I bumped into Mark at the sports center, a connection that quickly turned into something special. He's got this vibe that's hard to ignore, and before we knew it, we were deep in what you'd call a whirlwind romance. Now, let me set the scene for you. It was a hot summer day, and I was meeting Mark's family for the first time. I was nervous but excited. Dressed in a simple, knee-length dress with short sleeves, nothing flashy, but apparently, enough to kick off a storm. Mark had prepped me about his family, loving, a bit traditional, and protective of each other. He mentioned his mom, Linda, with a tone that I couldn't quite figure out at the time. "She's got strong opinions, but don't take it to heart," he said. Little did I know, those were words of warning. We walked into their family home, and there they were. Alex, Mark's younger brother, was the first to greet us, a hearty guy with a welcoming smile. Then came Linda. The air felt like it dropped a few degrees. Her eyes scanned me from head to toe, lingering on my arms. Yes, my arms. Bare because it was summer and it was sweltering outside. "Is this how you dress to meet your future mother-in-law? A bit bold, don't you think?" Linda's voice was colder than I expected, laced with a disapproval that felt like a slap. I was taken aback, my mind racing for the right words. Mark squeezed my hand, a silent form of support. I cleared my throat. "Well, it's summer, you know? It's quite hot outside, and I thought this was pretty decent and comfortable." Linda scoffed. "Comfortable or not, it's about first impressions." I would have expected something more appropriate. Mark jumped in, trying to smooth things over. "Mom, come on, it's really hot today. Eric is dressed fine. Let's not start off on the wrong foot." But Linda wasn't having any of it. "I'm just saying, Mark. It's about respect." "But fine, let's have dinner." Dinner was a tense affair. Conversations flowed around me, but Linda's earlier comments hung over the table like a dark cloud. Alex tried to lighten the mood, cracking jokes and sharing stories, which I was thankful for. Mark kept shooting me reassuring looks, but the damage was done. After dinner, while helping with the dishes, Linda cornered me in the kitchen. Listen, dear, I'm just looking out for my son. He's a good boy, and I don't want him to make a mistake. I was floored. A mistake? Linda, I love Mark, and I'm not here to play games. I don't know what I did to give you a bad impression, but that's not me. She just shook her head. We'll see. Time tells all truths. The ride home was quiet. Mark apologized for his mom's behavior, but I could tell he was upset too. She can be protective, but this was too much. I'm sorry, Erica. I sighed, leaning back in the seat. It's okay, Mark. But if this is how it's going to be, we've got a rocky road ahead. The wedding planning was in full swing, and Mark and I were all in, picking out decorations, tasting cakes, and of course, finding the perfect attire. I fell in love with this stunning dress, sleek and a tad revealing, but nothing outrageous. Well, at least I thought so until Linda caught a glimpse. You plan on wearing that in front of the whole family, Erica? She blurted out the first time she saw it. Looks like you're aiming for a beach party rather than a wedding. I tried to laugh it off. It's just modern, Linda. Plus, it's going to be a warm day, and I want to feel comfortable. Mark squeezed my hand, signaling not to start a battle we couldn't win. But Linda's frown said it all. She wasn't pleased, muttering about tradition and decency as she walked off. I thought, if a dress could stir the pot, what lay ahead? After the initial clash with Linda, things settled into a tense kind of normalcy. I threw myself into work and my blog, which was my slice of sanity. My blog and social media were my territory, a place where I felt in control and could share my passion for fitness and health. It never crossed my mind that this very passion would stir the pot once again. One evening, Mark and I were lounging on the couch, a rare moment of downtime. He was scrolling through his phone, a frown slowly forming on his face. "Babe, we need to talk," he said, his tone serious. I sat up. "What's up? Something wrong?" He handed me his phone, showing my Instagram profile. There, in the comments of my latest post, were a bunch of supportive and some flirty comments. Normal stuff, I thought. Okay, and? I was confused. "It's my mom," Mark sighed. "She's been going through your posts, making a big deal out of every single guy comment. She's spinning it like you're, I don't know, inviting attention?" I felt a rush of anger. You've got to be kidding me. It's Instagram, for crying out loud. People comment. That's how it works. Yeah, I know, but she's convinced there's more to it. She's telling everyone who'll listen that you're not faithful. It's ridiculous. I grabbed the phone from him, scrolling through the comments. Nothing out of the ordinary. Yet, Linda had managed to twist it into something sordid. So, what? Am I supposed to police who comments on my posts now? No, of course not. But maybe we could limit who can comment or something. Just until this blows over? Mark's suggestion was well-meaning, but infuriating. I snapped. So I have to censor my account because your mom has a twisted view of me? Hell no. That's not happening. Fast forward through the Instagram saga, with Linda twisting my every move into a scandal, things only got stickier. Alex, bless him, started giving me rides home from work since his office was just a block away from the gym. It was innocent convenience, but not to Linda's eyes. At a family dinner one evening, with the tension thick in the air, Linda started her usual insinuations. "Nice of Alex to play chauffeur, isn't it?" she said, her voice dripping with implication. "Seems like he's always there when Mark isn't." Mark's jaw tensed, and I saw Alex stiffen. "Mom, what are you implying?" Mark's voice had that warning edge, but Linda was on a roll. "Oh, nothing. Just making conversation," she replied, feigning innocence while her eyes darted between me and Alex. It was like a match to the fuse. "Stop it, Mom. You're out of line," Alex snapped, clearly at his limit. The argument escalated from there, with Mark caught in the middle, torn between his brother and his mother's accusations. The drive home was silent, the weight of the accusations hanging between us. I couldn't believe Linda would stoop so low, using Alex's kindness as a weapon against me. The whole mess with Linda reached a boiling point I never thought possible. After the latest stunt she pulled, accusing me of messing around because Alex gave me a few rides home, I hit my limit. I told Mark flat out, "Your mom's not welcome in our house anymore. I can't do it. She's crossed too many lines." "You'd think I'd declared war." Linda went ballistic when she heard about the ban. But honestly, I was past caring. Her constant digs and accusations were bad enough, but what came next was the real kicker. A couple of months down the line, I found out I was pregnant. Joy turned to chaos real quick. Linda, upon hearing the news, decided to spin a new tale, telling Mark she could be carrying anyone's child. "How do you know it's yours?" "With all those men at her gym, who knows?" Hearing that venom from his own mom, Mark started to change. He'd listen, really listen, to her poison. I could see it in his eyes, the doubt. It was like a slap in the face. Our once solid bond was now filled with this unspoken tension, eating away at us. One night, after overhearing another one of their phone calls, I confronted Mark. "So, what? You think I'm cheating on you? That this baby isn't yours?" My voice was sharp, a mix of hurt and anger. Mark looked torn, a shadow of himself. "I don't know what to think anymore, Erica. My mom, she's got all these ideas, and what? You're gonna take her word over mine? Over everything we've built?" I cut him off, disbelief coloring every word. He didn't answer. Just shuffled his feet and looked anywhere but at me. That silence spoke volumes, more than any argument ever could. Things between us got colder after that. Conversations were clipped, filled with tension. It was like living with a stranger. The joy of our upcoming baby was overshadowed by this cloud of suspicion and doubt. When our baby boy came into the world with his fair hair and bright blue eyes, I thought maybe, just maybe, things would start to look up. But I couldn't have been more wrong. As he grew, his features became even more pronounced, making him the spitting image of a golden-haired angel. Problem was, Mark, my husband, is as brunette and dark-eyed as they come, which, of course, gave Linda, the ever-suspicious mother-in-law, more ammo for her accusations. I even dug up my old childhood photos to show Linda and Mark, hoping it would shut down the whole ridiculous argument. "Look," I said, pointing to a picture of me at 5, blonde and blue-eyed, just like our son. "It's genetics, Linda. Can't you see the resemblance?" Linda just sniffed, unimpressed, her eyes narrowing. "Convenient, isn't it? That your genes decided to pop up now. And Alex being blonde doesn't help your case." Mark stood there, caught in the middle, his face a mix of confusion and hurt. The tension was unbearable. Things hit the fan at our son's first birthday party. With all the guests cooing over the baby, Linda couldn't resist making a scene. "This child looks nothing like my son. Everyone can see it. We need a DNA test to prove who the father really is," she announced out loud, making everyone uncomfortable. I was livid, my face burning with embarrassment and anger. "Are you out of your mind, Linda? Accusing me in front of everyone? No way am I doing some test just because your paranoia's got the better of you," I shot back, my voice dripping with indignation. It was humiliating, being accused like that, especially in front of friends and family. But then, Mark stepped in, and not in the way I hoped. "Actually, we're doing it," he said, his voice cold, a hardness in his eyes I hadn't seen before. "If you've got nothing to hide, then there's no issue. We do the test, or we're done. I can't be married to someone I don't trust." I was floored. "You serious right now? You're choosing your mom's crazy over me, over your son?" He didn't budge, didn't even seem to flinch at my words. "It's not just my mom. There's too much doubt, too much talk. The test ends it one way or another." "And until then?" I asked, my heart in my throat, already dreading the answer. "Pack your bags. Stay somewhere else." I can't look at you, not now, not with these doubts. His words cut through me, leaving a chill in their wake. So, there I was, packing up a storm, my hands shaking with a cocktail of rage and hurt. Our baby boy, oblivious to it all, watched with wide, innocent eyes as his world, and mine, crumbled. I left, heading to the only place I could think of, my mom's. My mom was waiting, arms wide open, when I got there. I barely got through the door, before I broke down. He's kicked us out, Mom. Over some DNA test Linda's convinced him we need. My mom was all fury, ready to storm over there and give Mark a piece of her mind. Over my dead body, she said, but I stopped her. No, it's not worth it. Not right now. I spent the night going over every moment, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. How did we get here, from being so in love to questioning our baby's paternity? And Alex, caught up in this mess for no good reason other than Linda's spite. After the whole mess at my son's first birthday, word got around fast. It felt like the whole city knew about Linda's accusations before the party favors were even picked up. My friends, my mom's friends, even the neighbors who'd watched me grow up, were all whispering behind my back. It was like living in a bad dream. Fed up and desperate to clear my name, I decided to go ahead with the DNA test. Picking up the phone, I called Mark, my voice steady, but my hands shaking. I'll do the test, I said, cutting straight to the chase. There was a pause on the other end before Mark replied, his voice too calm for my liking. I knew you'd come around. It's for the best. Arriving at the clinic, I was a bundle of nerves. Mark was there, looking like he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. And, to my surprise, so was Alex. Why is he here? I asked, nodding toward Alex, unable to keep the edge out of my voice. Mark didn't meet my eyes as he answered. There's been talk that you and Alex might have, you know. He's getting tested too. I felt my blood boil at the implication. You think I'd, with your brother? That's how little you trust me? Before Mark could reply, the specialist called us in, breaking the tension for a moment. Inside, the specialist laid it out straight. Determining paternity can be complicated when potential fathers are siblings. We'll need additional samples from everyone involved, including from you, Erica, to ensure accuracy. So, we all gave our samples, each of us lost in our own thoughts. I could tell Alex was mortified, Mark was conflicted, and me? I was just angry. Angry that it had come to this, angry at Linda, angry at Mark for letting his mother's paranoia get this far. With the tests done, we were told it'd be a couple of weeks before we got the results. Those weeks were the longest of my life. I wasn't just sitting around, though. I made a few calls, talked to a man who promised he could help me out in a delicate matter. I didn't know if it would lead anywhere, but I had to try something. The waiting was torture, not knowing what the future held for me, my son, and even Mark and Alex. But I clung to the hope that once the results were in, I could start to put this whole nightmare behind me. The tension in Linda's living room was almost a physical presence, wrapping its icy fingers around my heart as we waited. The grand reveal was about to happen, with everyone playing their part in this twisted family drama. My son clutched my hand, sensing the storm brewing but not understanding its cause. Linda, ever the master of ceremonies in her own mind, dramatically sliced open the envelope containing the DNA test results. Her anticipation was palpable, hoping, no doubt, for a scandal to validate her accusations. But the moment she peeked inside, her expression faltered, her disappointment clear as day. "The father is Mark," she announced, her voice losing its usual sharpness. Mark, who had been a bundle of nerves, visibly relaxed, a smug smile spreading across his face. He turned to me, his arrogance returning full force. "Well, there you have it. No harm done, right? You can come back home now." His words ignited something fierce within me, a mix of disbelief and anger. I couldn't hold back a bitter laugh. "Come back? After all this? You must be joking." He blinked, taken aback by my reaction. But, you're innocent, Erica. Isn't that what you wanted? That's when I played my hand, pulling out the divorce papers I'd kept hidden away. The silence that followed was deafening as I laid them on the table. Mark's face went from confident to pale, a look of sheer panic taking over. What's this? Why? Divorce papers, I replied, the words tasting like freedom. And here's why. I then produced the photos, the undeniable proof of Mark's infidelity, captured in vivid detail by the private detective I'd secretly hired. Mark's transformation was pitiful. From confident to broken, he started to babble apologies, his earlier facade crumbling. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Please, let's talk about this. Talk? I scoffed, my voice cold. You dragged my name through the mud, let your mother accuse me of the worst, and all the while, you were the one cheating. There's nothing to talk about. Linda attempted to intervene, her earlier eagerness for drama now replaced by a desperate need to salvage the situation. Now, dear, let's all calm down. We can fix this. Fix this? I cut her off sharply. Your son's a cheat. And you're no better for stirring all this trouble based on lies. After I laid out the proof of Mark's betrayal for all to see, the room turned into a battleground of broken bonds and shattered illusions. Linda, with a look of sheer disgust, couldn't tear her eyes away from the photos spread out like a hand of betrayal on the coffee table. I'm not just walking away, Mark. I'll be demanding alimony and compensation for this treachery, I declared, my voice steady but seething with anger. Mark's face drained of color, his earlier bravado evaporating into thin air. You can't be serious, he stammered, looking from the photos to his mother, seeking some sort of refuge or rescue. Linda, ever the matriarch, tried to salvage what little control she thought she had. Oh, please. She was never right for you. She would have cheated on you sooner or later. You're better off without her. That's when Alex, who'd been quietly simmering with rage, stepped in. Enough, he exploded, his voice echoing off the walls. I'm done with all of this. With both of you. He looked pointedly at his mother and brother. After everything you put her through, based on nothing but your own twisted suspicions, I'm out. Linda turned to him, her face a mask of shock and desperation. Alex, please, don't say that. I was just trying to protect our family. Protect? Alex scoffed, his scorn palpable. Is that what you call this? Destroying relationships, spreading lies? I can't be part of this family if this is what it stands for. I'm moving to another city. Starting fresh, away from all this madness. Hearing of Alex's decision later, I relayed the events to my mom. She had always been my rock, and even now, her words provided a cold comfort. That's the price of Linda's folly. Her arrogance and stupidity cost her her own sons. Maybe now she'll see the harm she's caused. The fallout was immediate and absolute. Alex followed through on his promise, moving away and cutting ties. Mark was left to deal with the consequences of his actions, his mother's manipulations laying the foundation for a chasm too wide to bridge between them. Life after the dust settled was different. Not easier, but clearer, like I was seeing everything for the first time again. My mom and I had many long talks about it all, sitting on her old, comfy sofa with cups of tea that always seemed to go cold before we finished them. Mom, I started one evening, the sky outside painting a picture of calm I didn't quite feel inside. Do you think I made the right choice? With everything, the divorce, standing up to Linda and Mark like that? My mom set her cup down, turning to look at me with those wise eyes that had seen more of life than I ever wished to. Darling, you did what you had to do. You stood up for yourself, for your dignity. That's more important than staying in a marriage that was built on distrust. The biggest change, besides the obvious, was in Alex. He'd moved to another city, cutting ties with his family. He called me once, just before he left. I can't stay here, not after everything. I need to start fresh, somewhere where every corner doesn't remind me of all this. I understood. You'll always have a friend in me, Alex. You were the only one who really saw me through all this mess. He chuckled, a sound that held a shadow of our shared troubles. And you, me. Take care of yourself, alright? After hanging up, I couldn't help but feel a pang of loss. Not just for the relationship I thought I had with Mark, but for the family I thought I was part of. Months passed, and life found a new rhythm. My blog started picking up more traction, becoming a space where I could share not just tips on fitness and health, but also personal stories of resilience and starting over. It resonated with people, more than I expected. As I was settling into this new chapter of my life, finding solace in the routine I'd built for me and my boy, my phone rang out of the blue one afternoon. The screen flashed a name I hadn't seen in a while, Linda. My initial instinct was to ignore it, let it go to voicemail, but something, maybe curiosity or maybe just a desire to finally put it all to bed, made me answer. Hello? Her voice came through, shaky and laced with something that sounded like regret. Erica, I was wondering, could I see him? My grandson? The audacity of her request after everything that had happened stopped me cold. For a moment, I was back in that living room, feeling the weight of her accusations all over again. You've got some nerve, Linda, I said, my voice steady but firm. After all the hell you put us through, now you want to play grandma? You didn't even want to see him before. She started to cry, mumbling apologies between sobs, trying to explain herself, but I wasn't having any of it. Save your tears, Linda. It's too late for sorries now. But please, I just want to make things right, she pleaded, desperation creeping into her voice. I sighed, a deep, weary sigh. You should have thought of that before. You made your bed. Now, you get to lie in it. Alone. Without waiting for her response, I hung up, the finality of the click echoing through me. It was harsh, maybe, but necessary. A line had been drawn, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was the one in control of where it went. Looking at my son, now a little older and wiser beyond his years, I knew we were going to be okay. We had each other, and a future that was ours to shape. The college campus was buzzing with the kind of energy that you can only find in a place overflowing with young dreams and ambitions. That's where I met Ethan. We were both gunning for the same scholarship, the kind that not only covered tuition, but also bragging rights. It was big, it was what every nerd in our batch was after. And boy, did we clash over it. Seriously, Ethan? You think you can outdo me on the thesis? Dream on. I'd scoff at him across the library, my eyes barely lifting from my laptop. He'd just grin, that annoyingly confident smirk that drove me nuts. Ava, I'll see you at the finish line. Better bring your A game. We were both stubborn as hell, each convinced we were the rightful winner of that grant. Our debates got so heated, sometimes I thought we'd end up setting the lecture halls on fire with our arguments. Your argument on the economic theories is so half-baked, I could serve it for breakfast, Ethan once told me during a mock debate. The class had erupted in laughter, and I could feel my cheeks burning, not just from embarrassment but from the raging fire to prove him wrong. Oh, please, your so-called innovative perspective is just recycled trash. Heard it all before, Ethan, I shot back, not missing a beat. It wasn't just about the scholarship, it was a battle of wits, pride, and, unbeknownst to us at the time, a budding attraction that neither of us wanted to admit. Our rivalry was the talk of the campus. We were always at each other's throats, challenging one another to do better, be smarter. But as the final decision on the grant neared, something shifted between us. Maybe it was the late-night study sessions that ended in shared coffee breaks, or the way we'd inadvertently learn more about each other's lives beyond the books. You know, for a smartass, you're not that bad, I found myself saying one night as we left the library together, the campus quiet around us. Ethan chuckled, shoving his hands in his pockets. Look who's talking. I've seen you help the freshmen with their assignments. Not the heartless competitor everyone thinks. It was strange, this new dynamic. Our banter softened, tinged with a reluctant respect that slowly melted into something warmer. When the day of the scholarship announcement came, we sat next to each other, an unspoken truce between us. "May the best man, or woman, win," Ethan whispered, his hand brushing mine. I remember the rush of emotions when they called my name. But what stood out more was the genuine smile on Ethan's face. "Guess you were the best man after all," he said, his laughter mingling with mine. From that day forward, our relationship took a new turn. We were still competitive, but it was different. We challenged each other to be better, supported each other's dreams. Our arguments turned into discussions, our banter into inside jokes. And somewhere along the line, we stopped being rivals and started being something more. Moving in together was the easiest decision we'd ever made. It felt like the natural next step, a testament to how far we'd come from those two hot-headed students who couldn't stand to be in the same room unless it was to argue over academic theories. Our friends were shocked. "You too? Really?" they'd ask, disbelief written all over their faces. "Yeah, really," we'd say, exchanging looks that spoke volumes of the journey we'd been on. From rivals to roommates to, dare I say, soulmates. Living with Ethan was like being in our little bubble. But bubbles are delicate, and ours was no exception, especially when it came to dealing with his folks. Martha and John were as traditional as they come, and our choice to live together without the whole marriage shebang didn't sit well with them. Not at all. It was like a broken record every time we saw them. "You're living in sin, Ava. It's not right," Martha would start, her tone laced with disappointment and a touch of scorn. She was a pro at guilt trips, making sure to sprinkle in stories of her own purity. "John and I didn't even kiss until we were married. Can you imagine?" I tried to keep my cool, respect was important to me, but boy, was it hard. "Martha, times have changed. People don't wait for marriage to be together anymore. It's normal." Ethan stood by me, bless him, but it was like talking to a wall with them. John would chime in, voice heavy with this sense of betrayed values. "We raised you better, Ethan. You're supposed to be a decent man, not swayed by this. That's what I was to them. Never Ava, always this, as if I were some bad influence instead of the person their son loved." Ethan tried to bridge the gap. "Mom, Dad, I love Ava. We're happy. Can't you just be happy for us?" But nope, it was like everything he said just bounced off them. Martha, with her knack for drama, would clutch at her pearls, literally. "Happy? How can we be happy when you're living in sin? It's not right, Ethan. You know it's not." The worst part? Ethan was caught in the crossfire. His folks made it seem like I had him under some spell. "You've changed, son. This isn't you," John would say, shaking his head like Ethan was some puppet gone rogue. And me? I was trying not to lose it. I respected their beliefs, sure, but the constant judgment was a drag. I told Ethan as much. "I get where they're coming from, but I'm not the enemy here. We're just living our lives." "I know," he'd sigh, looking like he was carrying the world on his shoulders. "It's just, they're my parents. I wish they could see how good we are together." In the end, it felt like we were stuck in this loop. Us trying to live our lives, them seeing it as some personal affront. It was exhausting, dealing with the endless lectures and the not-so-subtle digs at our life choices. But what could we do? They were his parents, and no amount of reasoning seemed to make a dent. So we kept on, living our sinful life, hoping one day they'd come around. Or at least, stop making every dinner feel like a trial where we were always found guilty. Just when I thought Martha and John's nagging couldn't get any worse, they hit us with a new plan. "You both need guidance," Martha announced one evening, her tone more determined than ever. "We've arranged for you to meet with Father Mike. He'll set you straight." Ethan and I exchanged a look. The kind that said, "Are you kidding me?" without needing words. "Mom, really? We don't need a priest to tell us how to live our lives," Ethan tried to reason, his patience wearing thin. But Martha was on a mission, and when Martha got going, there was no stopping her. "It's not up for discussion, Ethan. You're going, and that's final. It's for your own good." So there we were, a few days later, sitting uncomfortably in Father Mike's office, a cozy little room filled with religious books and those cliché inspirational posters. Father Mike was a kind-looking man, but the situation was just absurd. "Now, I understand there's some concern about your living arrangements?" Father Mike began, peering over his glasses at us. I bit my tongue, really wanting to say something snarky, but managed to keep it civil. "We're fine, really. It's just that Ethan's parents are a bit traditional." Father Mike nodded, as if this wasn't the first time he'd been dragged into a family squabble. "Marriage is a sacred union, but so is love and respect for one another. Are you two committed to each other?" Ethan took my hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "Yes, we are. Completely." The priest smiled, then turned to some of his books, probably looking for some wise quote to throw at us. But before he could get into it, Ethan cut in. "Look, Father, we appreciate what you're trying to do, but we're happy. Isn't that what matters?" Father Mike looked at us, then, after a long pause, he closed his book. "You're right. Happiness and commitment are what truly matter. Maybe it's not me who needs to guide you, but perhaps I can help your parents understand your choices." That meeting didn't magically fix everything, but it was a start. Or so we thought. Martha and John thanked Father Mike for his time, but seemed to ignore the whole happiness and commitment are what truly matter part. Instead, they focused on the sacred union bit. "See? Even Father Mike agrees. You two need to get married," Martha insisted, completely missing the point. Ethan and I just looked at each other, the reality of the situation sinking in. No matter what we did, it seemed like his parents would never be satisfied. It was like banging our heads against a brick wall. "Let's just get married and get it over with," I muttered to Ethan on our way home, half joking, but also half desperate for some peace. Ethan sighed, the weight of the world on his shoulders. "I'll do anything if it means they'll finally leave us alone." Little did we know, that decision to give in would open a whole new can of worms. But at that moment, all we wanted was a break from the constant pressure. If a wedding was what it took, then so be it. The wedding was something straight out of a fairy tale, or so I thought. I pulled out all the stops to make sure it was an event that would make Martha and John happy, given their traditional views. The church was decked out in flowers, the music was solemn yet uplifting, and I was dressed in a gown that was the very definition of elegance. Even Martha, who could rival a statue when it came to showing emotions, shed a few tears during the ceremony. But, of course, there was a catch. My friends, who'd been my rock through this whole ordeal, came dressed to kill. They looked amazing, but apparently, their style was a bit too much for Martha. "Did you see how they're dressed?" she whispered to me, right in the middle of the reception. "It's a wedding, not a nightclub." I could feel my cheeks burning, not sure if it was from anger or embarrassment. "Martha, they're my friends. They're here to celebrate with us. Can we just focus on that?" She clucked her tongue, shaking her head like I'd just failed the world's easiest test. "I'm just saying. A little modesty wouldn't hurt." After we caved and got hitched, Martha and John must have thought they snagged an all-access pass to our place. No kidding, they started popping by every single day. If you ever needed a live demo of what too much looks like, this was it. One Saturday morning, there's a knock that could wake the dead. I'm talking 6 a.m., and these two are at our door like they're about to miss a flight. Ethan, barely awake, trudges to the door, and there they are, bright and chipper. "Good morning. We thought we'd spend the day together." Martha chirps, pushing past Ethan like it's the most normal thing in the world. I'm in the kitchen, drowning my sorrows in coffee, when John starts critiquing my choice of breakfast. "You know, a hearty breakfast is important. Is this even food?" He's eyeballing my cereal like it's from another planet. "Eggs and bacon were fine for you, right?" I mutter under my breath, not in the mood to start my day off with a lecture on nutritional values. Then, Martha, bless her heart, decides to give me a rundown on cleanliness. Ava, dear, have you considered organizing your cupboards a bit more? And maybe using some coasters? Water rings on the table are such an eyesore. I'm biting my tongue so hard it's a miracle I still have it. Ethan sees me clenching my fists and jumps in. Mom, Dad, you know, we really appreciate your visits, but maybe we could do with a bit of space? You'd think he'd ask them to move to Mars by the looks on their faces. Space? But we're family. We just want to be close to you too, John says, utterly baffled by the concept of personal boundaries. Martha's on the verge of tears now, playing the guilt card like a pro. Do you not want us here? After everything we've done for you. It's like walking on eggshells. You try to set some ground rules, and suddenly you're the villain in their soap opera. I hit my breaking point on a Thursday evening, the kind that started with the same old surprise visit from Martha and John and ended with me locking myself in the bathroom, just to get a minute of peace. This has got to stop, I muttered to Ethan as we lay in bed, the moon casting a soft glow through our window. Your folks are driving me nuts. It's like we're living in a reality show, but there's no escaping the cameras. Ethan, looking as worn out as I felt, let out a long sigh. I know, babe. It's getting to me too. What do we do, though? They're my parents. But this is our home. We can't keep living like this, I shot back, my frustration bubbling over. We need space. Real space. Maybe we should move. Like, actually move. Ethan propped himself up on one elbow, eyeing me like I'd just suggested we join the circus. Move? Like, pack up everything and just go? Why not? I was half serious, half desperate. Your parents can't drop by if we're not here, right? The idea seemed radical, even to me, but the more we talked about it, the less crazy it seemed. We started to imagine a life where dinner wasn't interrupted by unannounced visits or our weekends weren't planned around avoiding his parents. Okay, let's say we do this. Where would we go? Ethan asked, the gears in his head turning. I don't know. Somewhere close enough to keep our jobs but far enough that it's not just a hop, skip, and a jump for your mom and dad, I suggested, warming to the idea. The decision felt right, almost liberating. We started house hunting online, looking for a place that could be our fresh start, far away from unannounced morning visits and constant criticism. It wasn't long before we found it, a cozy little house in a neighboring city. It was perfect, and the best part? I could buy it with the money I'd inherited from my grandmother. This wasn't just a new house, it was a statement. My money, my rules. A fresh slate on our terms. They're going to flip, Ethan said, dreading the conversation. Mom's going to think we're abandoning them. Maybe, I conceded, but we're not doing this to hurt them. We're doing it for us, for our sanity. They'll just have to understand. The conversation went as well as we'd feared. There were tears, accusations, and a lot of guilt being thrown around. But we stood our ground, knowing this was the right move for us. We did it, I said to Ethan as we signed the papers, the weight of the world lifting off our shoulders. The move was hectic, filled with boxes and goodbyes and the promise of peace. We kept our jobs, commuting a bit further than before, but every mile was worth it for the tranquility that greeted us at the end of the day. Our new life in the neighboring city was everything we'd hoped for. We fell back into our old rhythms, enjoying the quiet and the privacy we'd missed so much. The in-laws? We kept in touch through the internet, a safe buffer that allowed us to control the narrative and the visits. It was a compromise, but a necessary one. Our calls were polite, the conversations brief and infrequent, but it was enough to keep the peace. Just when Ethan and I thought we'd found our slice of peace in the new city, life decided to throw us a curveball. It was a quiet Sunday morning, the kind where you just want to laze around and enjoy the calm. That's when the doorbell rang, shattering the silence. Who could that be? I murmured, not expecting anyone. We weren't exactly social butterflies, especially not here, not yet. Ethan shrugged, equally puzzled, and strolled over to the door. When he opened it, his puzzled look morphed into outright disbelief. There, on our doorstep, stood Martha and John, each with a suitcase bigger than the last time they'd criticized our breakfast choices. "Surprise!" Martha exclaimed, her smile wide enough to split her face. John just nodded, his usual taciturn self, but even he seemed to wear a small grin. "What are? How did you? Why?" Ethan's eloquence was gone, replaced by staccato confusion. "We've decided to move in," Martha declared as if announcing they'd won the lottery. "It's time we all lived together, as a family should." My mind raced. This had to be a joke, a very bad one. "Move in? With us?" I echoed, hoping I'd misunderstood. "Yes, dear. We sold our house. We're here to stay," Martha said, pushing past Ethan, making herself at home as if she hadn't just dropped a bombshell on our doorstep. Ethan and I exchanged a look of sheer panic. "You can't just decide to move in with us," I managed to say, finally finding his voice. Martha and John weren't just shocked at our refusal, they were outraged. "You can't possibly expect us to leave. We're family, and this house, it's as much our son's as it is yours," Martha asserted, her voice a mix of indignation and disbelief. John, usually more reserved, joined in with a surprising fierceness. "Exactly. Ethan's our son, and you're living here, thanks to him. You're just a freeloader, making decisions that aren't yours to make." I could barely contain my laughter, not because it was funny, but because of the sheer audacity. Ethan's face was a picture of shock, turning to me with wide eyes as if to say, "Are they serious?" "Hold on a minute," I said, still chuckling as I went to retrieve a folder from our home office. I flipped it open to a very important document, the deed to the house. I made sure they could see it clearly. "See this? This house was bought with the money I inherited from my grandmother. I am the sole owner. So, actually, it's entirely up to me who lives here. And you," I pointed squarely at Martha and John, "are not staying." Martha's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, while John's face turned a shade of red I hadn't seen before. Ethan stepped beside me, a proud yet stern look on his face. "You heard her. Ava bought this house. Not me, not us, Ava. And we've decided together that moving in uninvited isn't an option." After I dropped the bombshell about owning the house, Martha tried to play her final card, all but declaring squatters' rights on account of Ethan living with me. "He's our son. We have every right to be wherever he is. We're family, and that means we stay together," she announced, puffing up like a peacock. I couldn't help it, a laugh escaped me, before I could clamp it down. This was it, the moment I'd been keeping close to the chest for just such an occasion. "Well, here's a fun fact for you," I said, the smile on my face growing wider by the second. "Ethan and I? We're not actually married. Not legally, anyway. The wedding was for show, to get you off our backs about living in sin." The look on Martha and John's faces? Priceless. Like they'd swallowed lemons whole. "What do you mean not married? That whole ceremony?" Martha's voice trailed off, her brain unable to compute. "Yep, a ceremony without the paperwork. So, technically, you're not my in-laws. And this," I gestured around, "is my house. Ethan's just living with me. My rules, my decision who stays and who goes." John's face went through 50 shades of red, anger, and embarrassment battling for dominance. "You can't just, that's not how things are done." Ethan stepped up then, his tone steady but firm. "Mom, Dad, I love Ava. And I'm tired, so tired, of the way you've treated us, her especially. We did what we had to live our lives on our terms. It's time you went home." Martha, not one to go down without a fight, turned her frustration into a weapon. "Ethan, you listen here. You're going to leave this woman, and come with us. She's tricked you, manipulated you." But Ethan was unmovable, a rock in the storm. No, Mom. I'm staying. With Ava. I love her, even if we're not married by your standards. It's my life, our life, and it's time you respected that. The standoff in our living room was tense, a silent battle of wills. But in the end, Martha and John had no choice but to leave, their departure a mix of rage and disbelief. As the door closed behind them, the silence that settled was profound, a mix of relief and the sobering realization of the bridge we'd just burned. Ethan and I looked at each other, a single thought between us: no matter what, we were in this together. After Martha and John huffed out of our place, tails between their legs, word got around through the grapevine that their big move was all a bluff. They never sold their house, it was just a ploy to muscle in on us, thinking they could pull one over and make themselves comfy at our expense. Can you believe that? The nerve of some people. But hey, here we are, still in our own little slice of heaven, shaking our heads at the whole mess. Can you imagine if they actually had sold their house? I said to Ethan one evening, the two of us sprawled out on the couch, enjoying the peace and quiet. Ethan chuckled, a deep, hearty sound that filled the room. That would have been a disaster. Good thing they're too attached to their precious home to actually go through with it. We got to talking about the future, just the two of us, figuring out where we go from here. So, what do you think about making it official, after if we're lucky enough to have a kid? Ethan asked, a bit hesitantly. I thought about it, turning the idea over in my mind. I guess. Might make things simpler, paperwork-wise. But I don't need a piece of paper to tell me I'm yours. Yes, I feel the same. It's just us, Ava. Always has been, always will be. Screw anyone who thinks they can dictate how we live our lives, Ethan said, his voice firm with conviction. It was settled then. We'd cross that bridge when we came to it, but for now, we were content. Just Ava and Ethan against the world, no legal documents needed to validate what we had. Our love was the real deal, stamps in the passports or not. And as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, that feeling of us against the world only grew stronger. We were a team, and nothing, not even sneaky in-laws with their bizarre schemes, could tear us apart. As for Martha and John, well, they kept their distance. Maybe they learned their lesson, maybe not. But one thing was for sure, Ethan and I were untouchable, living our lives on our own terms, in our own time. The future looked bright from where we were sitting, a blank canvas ready to be filled with love, laughter, and maybe, just maybe, the pitter-patter of tiny feet. But until then, we were just fine enjoying the peace, thankful for every quiet moment we had together in our little sanctuary. You know how they say life can flip on a dime? That's exactly what happened to me at this party. My friend Jess had been nagging me for weeks to come out and meet her bunch of incredible friends. Honestly, I was more into a quiet night with my reports and market analysis, but Jess wouldn't have any of it. Sarah, you need to get out more. Come on, it'll be fun, she insisted. So, there I was, in my least uncomfortable party dress, nursing a glass of wine and sticking out like a sore thumb among strangers. The place was buzzing, people laughing and chatting away. I stuck close to Jess, who seemed to know everyone. She was in the middle of introducing me to a couple of her friends when he walked in. Tom. Jess's face lit up. Oh, you gotta meet Tom, she said, dragging me through the crowd. Tom was this average-looking guy, nothing like the flashy type she'd expect at these gatherings. He had a sad smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Jess introduced us, and for some reason, we clicked. Maybe it was the way he talked about his daughter, Lily, with such warmth and pride. Or maybe it was his candidness about being a widower and raising her alone. Whatever it was, it got me. We found ourselves away from the crowd, sitting on some ridiculously oversized cushions. So, Sarah, Jess tells me you're into stocks and all that Wall Street stuff. Tom started, his voice rough but friendly. Yeah, something like that. I analyze investment opportunities, help people grow their money. Sounds boring, I know, I replied, trying to make my job sound less nerdy than it was. Nah, that sounds pretty damn impressive. Wish I knew a thing or two about handling money like that, he chuckled, taking a sip of his beer. We talked about everything and nothing: movies, books, the nightmare of dating. I found myself laughing more than I had in months. Tom had this easy way about him, making you feel like you'd known him forever. You know, I didn't want to come tonight. Socializing isn't exactly my strong suit, I confessed, feeling unusually open. Tell me about it. I only came because Jess promised Lily could tag along for a bit. Wanted her to meet some normal adults, whatever that means, Tom said, rolling his eyes. The conversation shifted to Lily, and I could see the light in Tom's eyes when he talked about her. She's something else, my Lily. Smart, kind, a bit too cheeky for her own good, he said, a proud smile spreading across his face. I was intrigued. She sounds wonderful. Raising a kid on your own, that's got to be tough. Tom shrugged, his expression turning serious. It's not easy, but Lily makes it all worth it. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. As the party wound down, I realized I didn't want this conversation to end. Tom felt like a breath of fresh air in my calculated, routine life. Hey, maybe we could grab a coffee sometime? Talk more about market trends, or whatever? I found myself saying, surprising even myself. Tom's smile was the answer I hoped for. I'd like that. It's been a long time since I had a reason to look forward to something. Very soon I met Tom's daughter, and she was like a breath of fresh air. We quickly became friends, which made her father very happy. That's how a simple meeting turned into a real love affair. After Tom and I decided to tie the knot, it was clear we wanted something simple, no fancy dresses or grand churches. Just us, my folks, and Lily, who was more excited than anyone. The day was plain but perfect, filled with genuine smiles and a few happy tears. Moving into Tom's house afterwards, I was buzzing with ideas to make the place feel more like ours, not just his. My new life meant working from home, which my boss was surprisingly cool about. It gave me the chance to really bond with Lily. I'd pick her up from school, and we'd chat about everything under the sun on our way to her ballet classes. She started calling me Mom, which warmed my heart every single time. Creating a cozy home for us became my new project, filling it with love and laughter. But, as the months rolled by, things with Tom started shifting, so subtly at first. He'd make offhand comments about dinner being too bland or too salty. Sarah, what's this supposed to be? Tom would ask, poking at a casserole I'd spent hours on. Supposed to be your dinner, but if you're gonna act all Gordon Ramsay about it, maybe you should cook tomorrow, I'd retort, trying to keep the mood light. He didn't. Instead, the critiques piled up. My appearance became his next target. Babe, when did you last hit the gym? You're looking different, Tom dropped casually one evening, his eyes skimming over me like I was a fixer-upper. Guess I'd been too busy being a stepmom and working from home. But thanks for the heads up, I snapped back, the sting of his words hitting harder than expected. Lily, bless her, was my silver lining. She and I grew closer, our bond unaffected by the growing tension between her dad and me. Mom, can you help me with my homework? Lily would ask, her bright eyes always looking up to me for guidance. Of course, sweetie. Let's tackle it together, I'd reply, grateful for her presence and the normalcy it brought. Even as Tom and I drifted apart, Lily and I stuck together like glue. I found solace in our little talks and her ballet recitals. Yet, despite my efforts to keep our home a haven, Tom's dissatisfaction seemed to seep into every corner. You know, Sarah, maybe you should try one of those online cooking classes. Spice things up a bit, Tom suggested one night, his tone laced with an undercurrent of displeasure. Or maybe we could try eating out more. Give your taste buds a break from my terrible cooking, I'd counter, half joking but deeply wounded. Life at home started feeling less like a family and more like walking on eggshells. Tom's attitude took a nosedive, and it wasn't just about small things anymore. He set these crazy rules like expecting a brand new dish for dinner every single day. It was as if he thought I was some kind of gourmet chef instead of his partner. One evening, I was in the kitchen, trying to whip up something new to keep him happy. I was juggling work emails on my phone, stirring a pot, and mentally planning my next day. Tom walked in, a scowl already forming on his face. "What's for dinner?" he asked, his tone sharp. "I'm trying something new, a recipe I found online. Thought we could use a little variety," I said, trying to sound upbeat. He just humphed, peering over my shoulder. "Doesn't look very appetizing. You know, when you decided to work from home, I thought you'd at least manage to keep the house in order and cook decent meals." His words stung. "Tom, you know I'm working too, right? It's not like I'm sitting around all day. Plus, I pick up Lily, help her with homework, visit my parents." He cut me off. Yeah, always the same excuse. "You're at home, aren't you? Shouldn't be too hard to keep things tidy and cook properly." I bit my tongue, holding back the tears. It was becoming a nightly ritual, this dance of disappointment and criticism. One night, as we settled on the couch to watch TV, he started on about my appearance. Pointing at the women on the screen, he said, "Look at them, they're about your age, right? Why do they look so much younger and better?" I tried to keep my voice level. "Tom, those women have all day to focus on looking good. They likely have personal trainers, chefs, and who knows what cosmetic work done." But he wouldn't have it. "Excuses, Sarah. It's all about priorities. You used to care about how you looked." I felt deflated, worn out. It wasn't just about the cooking or the cleaning anymore, it was a constant comparison, a reminder that I wasn't enough. During these times, Lily was my only solace. Now a teenager, she saw through her dad's behavior. "Mom, you don't deserve this. Why do you put up with it? You should just leave him," she'd say, her words filled with worry and anger. But I couldn't bring myself to believe that the Tom I fell in love with was completely gone. "He's under a lot of stress, Lily. I believe he still loves us. He'll change," I'd respond, more to convince myself than her. It's been a roller coaster, to say the least. 15 years of ups and downs, but mostly, it feels like I've been riding a slow descent into a place I never thought I'd find myself. Now, at 55, with my stepdaughter Lily living her own life, though we talk every day, sharing secrets and stories like we used to, life threw me another curveball. Cancer. The word hit me like a freight train, but somehow, I managed to keep my composure long enough to tell Tom. His reaction? Well, it was something. Not anger, not sadness, just disappointment. Not because of the diagnosis, but because I wouldn't be around to cook his meals or clean the house like I used to. "What am I supposed to do now?" "Look after myself," he had said, his voice laced with irritation rather than concern. I was stunned, not sure how to respond to such blatant selfishness. It's not like I expected a dramatic outpouring of love and support, but a little empathy wouldn't have hurt. His lack of concern cut deeper than any diagnosis could. So, I started treatment, spending more time in the hospital than at home. My parents, bless their hearts, visited whenever they could, despite their own health issues. Lily, too, was a constant presence, her calls and visits a bright spot in those dreary hospital days. Tom? He never showed. Not once. It hurt, more than I wanted to admit. Even after everything, part of me hoped he'd come around, show that he cared, even just a little. During one of Lily's visits, I couldn't hide my disappointment any longer. "I can't believe he hasn't shown up. Not even once," I confided, trying to keep the bitterness out of my voice. Lily, ever the straight shooter, didn't mince her words. "Mom, you deserve so much better. I've been saying it for years. It's like he doesn't even see you. You're fighting this battle, and where is he? Nowhere. You need to think about what's best for you now." I knew she was right, but it's not easy to let go of 15 years, even if they weren't all good. Deep down, I still harbored that small flicker of hope that things could get better, that Tom would change. But lying in that hospital bed, facing my own mortality, I started to see things more clearly. Maybe it was time to start thinking about what I needed, not just what Tom wanted. The revelation came on a Tuesday, just another ordinary day until Lily walked into my hospital room with a look that spelled trouble. I could tell something was up the moment I saw her. Lily never was good at hiding her feelings. "Mom, we need to talk," she started, avoiding my gaze. That's when my stomach tied itself into knots. Lily calling me mom was always a balm to my soul, but today, it felt like the prelude to bad news. "What's wrong, Lily?" I asked, bracing myself. "It's about Dad." She hesitated, then took a deep breath. "He's seeing someone else, Mom. And it's serious. He introduced her to me last week." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Not that our marriage was perfect, but to hear he'd moved on so blatantly was a different kind of hurt. "How long?" was all I managed to muster, my voice barely above a whisper. "A while, I guess." "I'm so sorry, Mom. I thought you should know." Lily's voice cracked, her usual toughness giving way to concern. I sat there, trying to process the news. Betrayed, yes, but surprised? Not entirely. Tom hadn't been a husband to me in a long time. Still, the confirmation of his infidelity stung. The shock of it hit me hard, though a part of me wasn't surprised. Tom's late nights, the sudden interest in looking younger, the new cologne, it all made sense now. Yet, hearing it out loud from Lily felt like a betrayal of a whole different kind. "Does he think this is okay? Introducing her to you like it's all normal?" I couldn't keep the anger out of my voice. Lily shrugged. "He's convinced himself you're already gone, Mom. Says it's time he moved on for his happiness. It's like he doesn't even care about how this would hurt you." I laughed, a harsh sound that surprised even me. "His happiness, huh? What about all those years I spent trying to make him happy? What a joke." And that's when it hit me, Tom had never really seen me. Not the real me. He saw a caretaker, a cook, a cleaner, but never his wife. And here I was, battling cancer, while he played house with someone else. For the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of something fierce within me. Anger, yes, but also determination. I'd been living for Tom, worrying about his meals, his house, his happiness. It was time to start living for myself. Lily wiped away a tear, looking determined all of a sudden. "What are you gonna do? You can't let him just get away with this." A cold resolve settled over me. Tom's actions, his complete disregard for our marriage, it all clarified one thing. It was time to close this chapter for good. "Tell him I agree to the divorce," I said firmly, surprising even myself with the decisiveness in my voice. "It's clear he's moved on, and so should I." Lily's eyes widened. "Really? Just like that?" "Yes, just like that. He thinks he can replace me so easily, let him try. But he'll regret this, Lily. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day. He'll see what he's thrown away." Lily stood up, her stance shifting from worried to warrior-like. "I'll tell him. And Mom, we'll get through this. Screw him and his midlife crisis fantasy. You're worth 1,000,000 of her." Her fiery spirit in that moment gave me strength. I was about to embark on a tough journey, battling both cancer and a crumbling marriage, but I wasn't alone. I had Lily, and together, we were formidable. "Thanks, Lily. We've got this," I said, a small smile breaking through the gloom. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would reclaim my life and my dignity, with my loyal stepdaughter by my side. 2 days had felt like an eternity, each moment dragging on as I lay in that hospital bed, my body fighting a battle I hadn't signed up for. Then Tom walked in, his presence as cold as the chill running down my spine. The smirk on his face was something out of a nightmare, but this was my reality. He looked me over, his eyes devoid of any warmth. "Look at you, all sick and pitiful. Can't say I'm surprised. You've let yourself go, haven't you? Found myself someone much better. Younger, prettier, healthier. He gloated, his words dripping with disdain. His words cut deeper than any knife could, but I was done showing him my pain. He threw the divorce papers on my bed, a challenge in his eyes. I took a deep breath, steadying my resolve. I picked up the pen and signed, each stroke a silent vow to myself that this was the beginning of my liberation, not my defeat. You're just as weak-willed as ever. Pathetic. He sneered, a twisted satisfaction in his gaze. I met his stare, my voice steady. If that's what helps you sleep at night, Tom. The confusion flickered across his face, replaced quickly by his usual arrogance. He strutted out, leaving a trail of bitterness in his wake. As soon as the door clicked shut, I reached for my phone with a determination that surprised even me. I called Lily, my voice stronger than I felt. Lily, it's done. But I need you to do something for me, I said, pausing to make sure I had her full attention. Tell your dad about the $3 million I plan to leave you. It's important he knows. There was a brief silence on the other end, and I could almost see the gears turning in her head. Mom, are you sure? He's going to flip out. A small smile tugged at my lips. That's the point, darling. True to form, Tom's reaction was immediate and as predictable as ever. My phone became an incessant, vibrating companion, lighting up with his attempts to reach me. With each missed call, I felt an inch taller, a bit stronger. I watched the number climb, 50, 60, 70 missed calls, and with it, my resolve solidified. I couldn't help but laugh, a sound that felt foreign yet fitting for the moment. Here I was, supposedly at my weakest, yet I'd never felt more empowered. I had taken the first real step towards freeing myself from the chains of Tom's manipulation and cruelty. The sun was just peeking through the blinds when Tom burst into my hospital room the next morning, desperation etched in every line of his face. His sudden change of heart was as transparent as it was pathetic. Sarah, I've been a fool. I see that now. I love you, and I'm ready to leave her and start over with you. We can remarry, start fresh, he pleaded, his hands outstretched as if he could physically pull me back into the life we once shared. I couldn't help but laugh, a deep, genuine sound that seemed to startle him. Tom, you've shown me exactly who you are. After years of neglect, cruelty, and now this betrayal? And you think what? A few sweet words and it's all forgiven? He blanched, taken aback by my reaction. Sarah, please. I mean it. I realized I made a mistake. I shook my head, still incredulous. A mistake? Tom, you deliberately chose to step out on our marriage, humiliated me while I was at my lowest. No, it's too late for regrets. His desperation turned to anger, his face reddening. You'll regret this. I'll make sure of it. I'll sue you for every penny of that hidden money of yours. The threat was laughable. Go ahead and try, Tom. That money? It's in my father's name. He made those investments, all legally binding and documented. You won't get a dime. The realization of his powerlessness hit him hard. His anger dissipated into sobs of frustration, a pitiful sight that had the guards rushing in. As they escorted him out, I moved to the window, watching him. There he was, the man I'd spent so many years with, looking so defeated and alone. Yet, I felt no pity. He was reaping what he'd sown, and in that moment, I knew I was finally free. Justice prevails, I whispered to myself, a smile touching my lips. In that hospital room, I made a promise to myself. No longer would I be defined by the failings of my marriage or the cruelty of a man who couldn't appreciate the love and loyalty I'd offered. It was time to rebuild, to focus on my health, my happiness, and the future I deserved. The battle with cancer was like riding the world's most terrifying roller coaster, one where you can't see the track ahead. Months of treatment stretched out, with good days where hope flickered bright and bad days where it dimmed to nearly nothing. Remission would come, lifting me up, only for exacerbation to drag me back down into the fight. But I kept fighting, every single day, with every bit of strength I had, both for me and for Lily. Finally, the doctors gave me the news I'd been dreaming of. I was healthy, the cancer was gone. Walking out of that hospital felt surreal, like stepping into a new life waiting to be written. The fresh start wasn't just symbolic, it was real, tangible, and it was mine for the taking. Recovery wasn't just about the physical, it was mental, emotional, a total overhaul of life as I knew it. The day I was discharged from the hospital marked not just the end of my treatment, but the beginning of something new. Something mine. Lily picked me up, her car loaded with my few belongings. "Ready to start fresh, Mom?" she asked, her smile bright and encouraging. I couldn't help but return her smile. "More than ready, kiddo." We drove to my new place, a modest house I'd bought with the money I'd wisely invested over the years. It wasn't just a house, though, it was a promise of new beginnings, of freedom. As we unpacked, Lily chatted about decorating ideas, about painting the walls and planting a garden. "This is going to be a place of happiness, Mom. You'll see. We'll make it our sanctuary." Her enthusiasm was infectious. For the first time in years, I felt light, like a weight had been lifted. "I'd like that, Lily. A sanctuary sounds perfect." We took a break, sitting amidst boxes, with takeout containers between us. "You know, I've been thinking," I started, "about what comes next. I want to use this chance not just to heal, but to rediscover who I am, who I want to be." Lily nodded, taking my hand. "I've got your back, Mom. Always. And hey, you're already doing it. Look at how far you've come." She was right. The journey from being trapped in a loveless marriage to standing on my own 2 feet hadn't been easy. But here I was, ready to face the world on my terms. "I'm thinking of starting a blog," I mused. "Sharing my story, maybe help others who've been in similar situations." "That's an amazing idea." Lily's eyes sparkled with pride. "You've got so much wisdom to share. Plus, you're pretty badass, you know?" I laughed, the sound bright and genuine. "Thanks, Lily. I guess I am, aren't I?" Said and done. I started my own personal blog, in which I shared the details of my struggle with cancer. People in the comments supported me, shared their own experiences. It was touching and reassuring at the same time. During one of our quiet evenings, Lily shared her own monumental decision. "Mom, I've cut ties with Dad," she said, her voice steady, but I could see the turmoil in her eyes. "After everything, I see you as my real mom. He chose his path, and I've chosen mine, with you." Hearing her call me Mom in that context, knowing the weight it carried, filled me with an indescribable mix of pride and sorrow. Sorrow for the broken bridges in her life, but pride in her strength and in the bond we shared. "Lily, there's something I've been meaning to tell you," I started, taking her hands in mine. "When the time comes, I'll be leaving everything to you, the house, the $3 million, all of it. You're my family, my future." Lily looked at me, tears brimming in her eyes, but a smile breaking through. "I don't need any of that, Mom. Just having you is enough. But thank you, for everything." In that moment, any lingering shadows of the past faded away. We were family, bound not by blood but by choice, by love. And as we looked ahead, the future wasn't just a blank page, it was a canvas waiting for us to fill it with color, with life. I wasn't looking for love, not really. At 28, I was a rising star at my finance firm. Spreadsheets were my love language, and my cubicle felt more like home than any bar or dating app ever could. Then came Sarah's rooftop party. Sarah, my coworker and best friend, had a knack for dragging me out of my comfort zone. This time, it was a mixed crowd, a bunch of artists and musicians Sarah knew, and a few of the more normal people from the office. That's where I saw him. He was arguing, well, more like playfully sparring, with a guy over the best way to restore a brick building. He was tall and lean, with kind eyes and a mess of dark brown hair that looked like he just ran his fingers through it. He wore a worn leather jacket over a faded t-shirt that probably had a band logo I wouldn't recognize. The opposite of my usual button-down and slacks crowd, but something about him drew me in. So, you think slapping a fresh coat of paint on history is a good idea? He was saying, a playful smile on his face. The other guy, a stocky dude with a shaved head, rolled his eyes. Hey, it preserves the structure, right? Yeah, but it erases the character. The guy in the leather jacket countered. The cracks and the wear, that's what tells the story. I found myself walking closer, drawn to their easy banter. Just then, Sarah appeared beside me, a mischievous glint in her eyes. Amelia, this is Mark, she said, nudging me forward. Mark, this is Amelia, the spreadsheet wizard I was telling you about. Mark turned, his smile widening when he saw me. Spreadsheet wizard, huh? Sounds impressive. It pays the bills, I replied, feeling a blush creep up my cheeks. But I can also hold my own in a conversation that doesn't involve amortization schedules. I winked at Sarah, who snickered. Challenge accepted, Mark said, his voice warm and inviting. So, Amelia the spreadsheet wizard, what do you think about preserving history? We ended up talking for hours about everything and nothing. He was an architect, passionate about restoring old buildings and giving them new life. I told him about my crazy hours at the firm and the satisfaction of closing a big deal. There were no awkward silences, just a comfortable flow of conversation that felt effortless. As the night wound down, we found ourselves standing by the railing, overlooking the city skyline. The air was cool, and goosebumps prickled my arms. This was fun, I admitted, surprised by the slight tremor in my voice. Yeah, he agreed, his gaze fixed on the glittering cityscape. I wouldn't mind doing this again sometime. Me neither, I blurted out before I could overthink it. We met with Mark's parents, Martha and Arthur, at a fancy restaurant they picked. The conversation flowed easily enough, at first. We talked about the wedding plans, the venue I'd booked, a beautiful old converted library, and the caterer I was stressing over. Turns out organic, locally sourced canapés are a pricey business. Then, things took a weird turn. Martha, mid-bite of her lobster bisque, which she pronounced bisky with a forced accent, suddenly fixed me with a steely gaze. So, Amelia, she said, dabbing her lips with a napkin, Mark tells me you work in finance? Yes, I'm a financial analyst at a large firm downtown, I replied, unsure where this was going. Analyst, huh? Sounds important, Arthur chimed in, his voice booming across the table. You must do well for yourself. Mark, who had been mostly quiet up until this point, cleared his throat. Dad, come on. That's not what we're talking about. Just making conversation, son, Arthur said, waving his hand dismissively. He turned back to me. So, Amelia, you mentioned a firm? Big name, I presume? I told him the name of the firm, a global player in the financial world. A satisfied smile spread across Martha's face. Excellent, she declared. And you say you do well for yourself? Investments? Stocks? That kind of thing? Yes, I manage a portfolio, I replied, feeling increasingly uncomfortable. This felt more like an interrogation than a meeting with my future in-laws. A portfolio, huh? Martha leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. How much are we talking about here, dear? My jaw dropped. This was outrageous. Nobody, not even family, asked questions like that. I glanced at Mark, hoping he'd step in, but he just avoided my gaze, fiddling with his breadbasket. That's really personal information, Mrs. Miller, I said, forcing a smile. Oh, come on, honey, Martha huffed. We're practically family now. Isn't that right, Mark? Mark mumbled something non-committal, his cheeks flushed pink. I decided to take matters into my own hands. Look, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Money isn't everything. Mark and I love each other, and that's what matters most. Love is great, sweetheart, Arthur chimed in again. But let's face it, love doesn't pay the bills. I took a deep breath. This dinner was turning into a disaster. Maybe we should stick to talking about the wedding, I suggested, hoping to change the subject. The next morning, I called my grandma. As soon as I hung up with her after recounting the dinner with Mark's parents, a wave of doubt washed over me. Her words, "greedy and selfish people," echoed in my head. But I brushed it off. Grandma could be a bit old-fashioned sometimes. Sure, Martha and Arthur were a little blunt, but they seemed genuinely happy for us. Maybe they were just a bit awkward when it came to expressing their emotions. Fast forward a few months, and wedding planning was in full swing. Everything, from the venue to the flowers, felt like pulling teeth. Whenever money came up, Mark would give a sheepish shrug and say, "Work's been a bit tight lately." His parents, bless their hearts, kept offering suggestions, cheaper venues outside the city limits, a family friend who did amazing catering for a discount meaning they'd barter for vegetables from their neighbor's garden. Needless to say, I ended up footing most of the bill. Mark, ever the charmer, would say things like, "You're amazing, honey," handling everything like a champ. But his lack of financial contribution started to grate on me. Finally, the big day arrived. It was beautiful, the weather cooperated, the food was delicious, and most importantly, Mark and I said "I do." The only sour note was Grandma. After the ceremony, she pulled me aside, her wrinkled face etched with concern. "Amelia, honey," she said, her voice low, "be careful with those in-laws of yours. They don't have your best interests at heart." I rolled my eyes. Here we go again. "Grandma, they're just excited. They love Mark, they love me. Everything's fine." The honeymoon phase was barely over, the leftover wedding cake still sitting on the counter, when the first major in-law incident occurred. It was a Sunday morning, and Mark and I were still luxuriating in bed when a loud thump from downstairs shattered the peaceful silence. We exchanged a confused look, then Mark mumbled, "Probably the mail." Wrong. The thump was followed by a cacophony of rustling paper and muffled exclamations. Throwing on robes, we hurried downstairs to find a scene that could have been ripped straight out of a horror movie. Well, a horror movie with a lot of floral wrapping paper and gaudy gift bags. Martha and Arthur were sprawled on the living room floor, surrounded by wedding presents like vultures picking over a carcass. They were tearing into boxes, oohing and awing over some items, tossing others aside with dismissive grunts. "What in the world is going on here?" I demanded, my voice laced with disbelief. Martha, mid-unwrap, looked up and flashed a megawatt smile. "Amelia, darling. Just admiring your lovely wedding gifts." "Admiring?" I sputtered. "It looks more like you're ransacking the place." Arthur, holding up a crystal vase and squinting at it, snorted. "Relax, sweetheart. Just sorting things out. Can't have all this clutter lying around, can we?" Clutter? These were gifts, chosen with love, hopefully, by our friends and family. But before I could voice my outrage, Mark spoke up. "Maybe they should just leave the presents unopened, right?" he said, his voice mild. "Exactly," I chimed in, relieved he wasn't completely oblivious. Martha scoffed. "Don't be silly, honey. It's rude not to open presents. Besides," she added, her eyes gleaming, "we might find something truly special in here." Special for them, that much was clear. I watched in growing frustration as they picked through the gifts, setting aside anything that caught their fancy, a silver picture frame, a set of engraved wine glasses, a fancy cheese board. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "These are our wedding gifts," I said, my voice firm. "Not yours to take." "Look, honey," Martha said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "We just saw some things that would look lovely in our new house. You know, the one we're redecorating?" They were redecorating? With our wedding gifts? The anger bubbled up inside me, threatening to spill over. "What about the gift you got us?" I asked, my voice tight. Martha paused, her hand hovering over a box wrapped in fancy floral paper. She rummaged through the pile, finally pulling out a small, oddly shaped package. With a flourish, she handed it to me. I unwrapped it slowly, my heart sinking with each layer of tissue paper. Inside was a cheap glass statuette, the kind you'd find at a discount store, adorned with garish plastic flowers. My stomach churned. This was their idea of a wedding gift? Maybe Grandma was right. Maybe I'd married into a nightmare. The wedding gift incident was just the tip of the iceberg. Martha's shopping sprees became a regular occurrence. She'd call, all chipper, and ask me to join her for a girls' day out. What it actually meant was me being her unpaid personal shopper. We'd browse stores, and inevitably, Martha would find something absolutely must-have. Then, at checkout, she'd do this weird shuffle with her purchases and mine, muttering about forgetting her wallet and such a hassle with separate bags. Of course, by the time the cashier figured it all out, I'd be stuck paying for both our stuff. Arthur wasn't much better. Weekends were his prime visiting time. He'd waltz in unannounced, plop himself down on the couch, and proceed to spend the entire day glued to the TV, inhaling whatever snacks I had on hand. When I finally built up the courage to ask him why he spent so much time at our place, he looked at me with a straight face and said, "Saves money on groceries and electricity, doesn't it?" The audacity of the man. Did he think we were running a charity? Mark, ever the peacekeeper, just rolled his eyes and muttered something about Dad just needing some company. The birthday dinner was the final straw. I decided to treat myself, a nice night out at a fancy restaurant to celebrate another year older, and hopefully wiser. Naturally, I invited Martha and Arthur. Big mistake. The menu was a confusing array of French names and unfamiliar ingredients. Undeterred, Martha and Arthur ordered the most expensive dishes, pronouncing them with a confidence that belied their complete lack of knowledge. Halfway through the meal, Martha declared the escargots too slimy and pushed the plate away. Arthur choked on a mouthful of bouillabaisse, spraying a gout of saffron broth across the table. The entire evening was a disaster. By the time the bill arrived, my blood pressure was through the roof. The cost of that meal could have fed us for a month. And guess who offered to chip in? Nope, not Mark. He just sat there, oblivious, while I choked out a strained thank you to the waiter and reached for my credit card. Back home, fuming and frustrated, I finally confronted Mark. "How can you just let your parents walk all over you like that?" I demanded. "Come on, babe," he said, dismissive. "It's not a big deal. They're just, like that." Like what? Selfish and entitled? Mark, this isn't okay. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, I love you, but you gotta pick your battles. My parents are, well, my parents. They're not gonna change." Maybe he was right. Maybe I had been naive, hoping to change them, to somehow mold them into the in-laws I'd always dreamed of. But the reality was staring me in the face. Martha and Arthur were who they were, and that wasn't going to change. The birthday dinner debacle was a turning point, but not the end. The in-law gift-giving strategy became painfully clear: shower us with cheap, impersonal trinkets on holidays and expect extravagant presents in return. A framed picture of a lighthouse for Christmas? Try a top-of-the-line espresso machine for Mother's Day, according to Martha's order. Any hint at the unbalanced value of gifts resulted in a lecture about family and not keeping score. My grandma, bless her soul, wouldn't dream of asking for anything. Every time I'd inquire about a holiday gift, she'd brush it off with "Honey, I have everything I need. Just come visit, that's all that matters." Meanwhile, Martha and Arthur treated gift-giving like a competitive sport. They'd show up unannounced, a triumphant glint in their eyes, brandishing their latest treasures. A chipped ceramic fruit bowl for Christmas? A set of mismatched oven mitts decorated with faded cartoon cats for Valentine's Day? Each offering felt like a slap in the face. The final insult came on Thanksgiving. This year, I'd opted for a quiet night in, just Mark and me, maybe order some takeout and watch a movie. But of course, Martha and Arthur had other plans. They barged in, laden with shopping bags, their faces plastered with self-satisfied grins. "Happy Thanksgiving, sweetie," Martha trilled, thrusting a brightly wrapped package at me. I unwrapped it with a sinking feeling. Inside was a gaudy scarf, the kind you might find at a gas station gift shop. Flowers were fake plastic, the fabric felt like sandpaper against my skin. "It's perfect, isn't it?" Martha beamed. "Matches your new coat perfectly." I forced a smile. The coat in question was a vintage find I'd scored at a thrift store. The scarf, well, it clashed spectacularly. "Thanks, Martha," I mumbled, trying to hide my disappointment. Arthur, meanwhile, was holding up a small box. "And for you, son," he declared, "a little something to help you unwind after a long day at work." Mark's eyes lit up. He eagerly tore into the box, revealing a pack of cheap drugstore cigars. The kind that smelled like dirty ashtrays and regret. "Thanks, Dad," he said, a genuine smile spreading across his face. That was it. The final straw. Here I was, staring at a birthday gift that insulted my taste and a husband who seemed more excited about a pack of drugstore cigars than his wife's well-being. The anger simmered inside me, threatening to boil over. But instead of exploding, I did something completely unexpected. I took a deep breath, forced a smile, and thanked them for the lovely gifts. A glimmer of hope arrived in the form of my work performance. I landed a coveted quarterly award, a hefty bonus that practically screamed, "Celebrate." Venice, with its romantic canals and rich history, had always been a dream destination. Knowing I spoke fluent Italian sealed the deal. This trip, I decided, would be a chance to reconnect with Mark, to escape the suffocating grip of his parents for a while. Except news travels fast, especially bad news to eager ears. Martha and Arthur, upon learning of our travel plans, descended like hungry vultures. "Venice, huh?" Martha cooed, her eyes gleaming with a disturbing avarice. "Sounds delightful. Always wanted to see those gondolas up close." "Actually," I said, trying to be polite, "this trip is just for Mark and me. A little romantic getaway." Arthur scoffed. "Come on, Amelia, don't be selfish. We've never been to Europe, let alone Venice. Think of the pictures." "Pictures?" This wasn't about a photo op with gondolas, it was about escaping their smothering presence. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice firm, "but this is a trip for two." My polite refusal triggered a meltdown of epic proportions. They called me selfish, greedy, accused me of trying to alienate Mark from his family. The worst part? Mark, ever the peacekeeper, didn't stand up for me. Instead, he mumbled something about maybe they could come along and it wouldn't be that bad. That's when I knew. This wasn't just about a trip anymore. This was about boundaries, about respect, about whether our marriage could survive his parents' constant intrusion. I looked at Mark, my voice laced with ice. "Absolutely not. This is our trip, and they are not invited." The fight that followed was brutal. Harsh words were exchanged, accusations hurled. By the end of it, a heavy silence had settled between us. We retreated to opposite ends of the apartment, a cold war brewing in our once happy home. Days blurred into one another, the silence in the apartment a constant reminder of the chasm that had opened between Mark and me. I didn't call his parents, the mere thought of their entitled whining made my stomach churn. Mark remained in his self-imposed exile, the only communication a terse, "good morning," mumbled in the kitchen each day. Then, on a random Saturday morning, I woke up to an empty apartment and a sinking feeling in my gut. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, the notification sound grating on my nerves. Glancing at it, my blood ran cold. Airline ticket confirmations. 3 of them. To Venice. Purchased from my account. Panic clawed at my throat. No. It couldn't be. But as I scrolled through the confirmations, the sickening truth settled in. Mark, with the audacity of a seasoned thief, had used my trusted access to our bank account to book not only his own ticket to Venice, but 2 more, for his precious parents. Hotel reservations, also courtesy of my hard-earned money, confirmed my suspicions. He'd gone behind my back, completely disregarded my feelings, and booked a vacation for himself and his leech-like family with my money. The anger, hot and furious, burned away the remnants of any affection I might have had left for him. My fingers flew across the screen, canceling the return flights and hotel rooms. Next, with a steely resolve, I revoked Mark's access to my bank account. One small act of defiance in the face of their colossal selfishness. A few hours later, my phone erupted with a call. Mark's name flashed on the screen, but I let it go to voicemail. The voicemail notification arrived a moment later, his voice laced with a mixture of panic and fury. "Amelia, where the hell are you? We're supposed to be checking into the hotel. What did you do with the tickets?" I deleted the message without listening. Then came a barrage of texts, from both Mark and Martha. A mixture of demands, accusations, and veiled threats. Mark's final message, though, sent a dark chuckle rippling through me. "If you don't give me back access to the account and get us on that damn plane, Amelia, we're done. Consider this your divorce notice." With a newfound clarity, I started making my own plans. I contacted a lawyer, the weight lifting from my shoulders with each step towards independence. Mark's divorce notice might as well have been a gift. I didn't wait for Mark to waltz back in, tail between his legs. Packing was cathartic. Clothes went into suitcases, knickknacks into boxes. But the gifts from Martha and Arthur, those gaudy trinkets and mismatched sets, I left untouched. I lined them up on the living room floor, a garish monument to their selfishness. A final act of defiance before I slammed the door shut on that chapter of my life. Grandma's house, with its familiar scent of cinnamon rolls and worn furniture, felt like a warm hug. Tears streamed down my face as I recounted the entire ordeal, the hurt and anger spilling out like a dam breaking. Grandma listened patiently, a sad smile on her lips. "I told you, honey," she said softly, her voice laced with a hint of "I told you so," but mostly concern. "But sometimes you gotta learn things the hard way." "You know," I said, a newfound determination settling in my voice. "Maybe this is a good thing. Now I know what to look for, what to avoid." A few days later, a knock on the door shattered the peaceful afternoon. My heart lurched, but before I could react, Grandma ushered me towards the back room. Peeking through the curtain, I saw Mark standing there, looking lost and dejected. "Amelia, please," he pleaded, his voice thick with desperation. "Let me explain." Grandma opened the door a crack, her expression unreadable. Mark launched into a groveling apology, spewing words about realizing his mistakes and trying to distance himself from his parents. The anger that had been simmering inside me bubbled over. I barged into the hallway, a cold fury in my eyes. "Distance himself?" I scoffed. "Mark, you were about to spend my money taking them on a vacation. This isn't about you suddenly seeing the light. This is about you being comfortable. Comfortable because I paid the bills and bought your parents presents." He opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off. "No, Mark. This is over. I don't want to build a life with someone who prioritizes comfort over respect, or someone who lets his parents walk all over him and his wife. I deserve better than that." Mark's face crumpled, but this time I felt no pity. The door shut with a finality that echoed in the silence that followed. Maybe Grandma was right. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning of something new, something better. A life free of entitled in-laws, a life filled with respect, and maybe, someday, with love that wasn't selfish or convenient.